Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. I am Dom of X, and this is something completely brand new I'm started to do on this channel because I wanted to make my summer a whole lot more fun by creating more content, and I decided, hey, let's go ahead and start up a brand new podcast. And today, and for the rest of the weeks and however long we'll be doing this, I am joined by a very special guest. If you would like to introduce yourself, sir.
Hey, my name is Andrew Morgan. I'm a friend of Dom's. We met at school. So we met on the speech and debate team. But yeah, my name is Andrew Morgan. I love talking with a bunch of pop culture stuff. And I think that's kind of what this podcast is going to be about. And a little bit about me. I'm from Stockton, California, from Northern California, just like Dom. And yeah, I like it a lot here. Obviously, the podcast title, you know that we're Filipino. I'm half Filipino, half white. So that's a little bit about my background. You'll probably learn more about me if you listen to more episodes. But yeah, I'll pass it back to you, Dom.
This is awesome. I told myself, man, I want to deck out the schedule of my free time in the summer with as much creative content as possible, just because it made sense for me and my growth as a content creator. And obviously, you know me from, if you guys have been on my channel, obviously, like, I hit 200 subscribers, and thank you for all that. But like, working for, like, some of you guys are from Near Mint Condition, which is the channel that I work for, and from comicreleases.com, which is the website I work for. But the goal of this is just going to be a fun exercise for both of us, figuring out, hey, like, what can we talk about for an hour plus? Doesn't matter. And this is something like we talked about behind the scenes too, where it was, how can we talk about as much as possible without restricting the boundaries of our topics? And we figured, well, it just made sense if this was just going to be the two of us talking and spitballing for the next however long it is. So that's just what we came on, and it made sense to me, and I was like, let me get to creating the graphics and everything.
Yeah, and I like that idea, right? Like, I didn't want to, we're right. We talked about this, and we were like, yeah, we don't want to make this about only one thing. I'm not as big into comics as Dom is. Like, I do watch a lot of movies, but I haven't really read comics besides the ones that Dom gave me, which I'm very grateful for, and I need to finish those. But yeah, I haven't read a lot of comics, so I think a lot of this is coming, which is kind of cool, especially because this first episode, which we'll get into in a little bit. But Dom has the comic book experience. I have none of the comic book experience, so you have a little bit of a diversity of opinion there as far as the source material and like our opinions of it. But yeah, I think most of this, you know, it's going to range. We're going to have a lot of like diverse sort of movies, but also forms of media. It's not all going to be movies. We'll have some television shows. Eventually, maybe we'll do a comic or something if that comes to that. But it's also kind of just what's going on. What do we care about right now? Like, what are we watching right now? Or what stands out to us? Or what do we want to talk about? Which I think is cool because I like the freedom of it. And, you know, it also lets the audience get to know us a little bit better and not just like this one thing that we care about.
Exactly. And I think that's just going to be the beauty for like however long this lasts. And also just, there's so much to talk about that's happening in this world right now. And I mean, not even just in media, I'm just talking about regular everyday life that affects both of us on the macro and micro level. And I think that's just the fascinating thing about, well, just getting to do content creation just in general. It's like you get to talk about, you know, anything, obviously, with a lot more free reign than some other hobbies. But I mean, that's why I love doing this, and that's why I've been doing this for the last 10 years of my life. So I mean, even with all the restarts that I've had, I mean, again, this is just going to be a super fun thing I hope we get to do for a long time. And today we're going to be talking about the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And we were talking about like what to talk about on that first podcast, and this happened during Spring Fling, so for all the folks who don't know, it was just pretty much like a speech tournament, and I think what set it up for me was like, hey, I got to talk about Star Wars. But we're not talking about Star Wars, we're talking about films that were based off of comic material from as early as 1963, and so we're going to be talking about Phase 4, and I feel like it's important because Marvel has dominated pop culture for the last
over a decade,
2 decades,
over a decade. Yeah.
So, and I was like, man, I need to go rewatch some of these movies that I saw. I saw all these in theaters. Like, if you guys see in the middle of the screen, there's like a nice cheat sheet of all the topics we're gonna be talking about, and we're gonna breeze through them, but also talk about them in depth because Drew took notes, and I was like, all right, if you guys what I want to do. But again, like I love the MCU. I love Marvel. I love these characters. But I just wanted to see where did it fall off for not only like people in my close circle, but for a good portion of the human population.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I think because I think Iron Man, the first Iron Man movie came out in 2008 or something. Was it like 2008, 2009, something like that? Yeah. So I mean, it's 2024 now, so we're talking 16 years of the MCU kind of dominating. Obviously there were some DC movies in between that were like amazing, right? Like Dark Knight is amazing, but that was also 2008, and Dark Knight Rises didn't live up to the hype for me. We're not talking about those movies, but there's no big blockbuster that's kind of even come close to what the MCU has done. Like, not even Star Wars has been that big. Obviously people went to it, but it doesn't have the following that the MCU has now, even though Star Wars has decades and decades of a head start on it. Also, you have other blockbusters like Avatar. I didn't even see the second Avatar movie, Avatar: The Way of Water. I was just like, I just don't understand why. I don't understand the hype. I don't get it. Like, I watched the first one. I was like, I don't get it. Like, I genuinely don't understand. But okay, so for those of you, if you want to know philosophy, since we're gonna be getting into these movies, I do think that like individual stories are important, and I know the MCU is all connected, so I try to keep that in mind. But also, I think that like as a director or a writer or an editor, producer, all these different things, these are like movies. Any form of media is just a series of sequences of choices that are made by these people, and these choices should add something to the story that the creators are trying to tell. And so I think that's going to be one of the themes throughout my notes today, is like, what stories are these movies trying to tell? Not just like origin story for this character or blank for X person or whatever, but like how like what does this tell us? What does this tell the audience? What does this tell us about the person or about the movie in general, or about the people in general? Stuff like that.
I mean, there's a whole lot of people in all of these movies, and that's why we keep going back to like all of these films. It's like, one thing I've noticed with Marvel is that they're really, really good, or usually really good, at getting the audience to connect with the people in those movies and have them follow them wherever they go, right? You're not just there because, hey, I want to see like this story adapted, or like I don't know anyone who thinks like that, but I know people who go, hey, the Guardians of the Galaxy are in this movie, I want to see what they're doing there. Oh, I know, like, I want to see what Black Panther or Captain America or are doing there. I mean, that's the strength of these movies, and we're gonna look at a couple of these movies like in detail, and see like
Phase 4 specifically.
Again, you see, like, we're going to talk about a whole lot of these different films, but I mean, like, there are some movies here that don't have that stigma of you want to see these, like, follow these characters. So, and we're going to start it off with Black Widow, which is a movie, the first movie that came out right after. This is the first movie that came out right after the pandemic, so
That's right.
There's a whole lot of that going, and
there was some drama too. Yeah, I remember that.
There was, with the whole, like, are people allowed to go in the movie theaters, close proximity? Yeah. Are we still going to be in close quarters, considering the easiness of catching the virus? So I know it had that going on for it, but I remember this movie just daintily because of I watched it both in theaters and at home, and like both simultaneously. Like, I remember you had the choice of pay $30 to see it on Disney Plus early, or go to the theater and watch it.
Yeah, I did not go to the theater and watch it. I do remember hearing about, like, follow like news and stuff like that. But I remember Scarlett Johansson being very upset because I think her like contract was tied to the earnings of what it made in the box office, and obviously it bombed at the box office because one, it was COVID, right? Two, they released it on Disney Plus, so obviously people were just going to watch this from the comfort of their homes. and she sued Disney and successfully, like, she won that lawsuit. From my understanding, I don't know. Maybe you'll have to cut this out. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't remember, but I'm pretty sure she successfully sued Disney. But yeah, like I just saw this. I didn't have any interest in seeing this movie. My whole thought behind this was like she dies in Infinity War, spoiler, or not Infinity War, sorry, Endgame, spoiler alert, folks. But I was like, why are we doing, to me, what seems like an origin story for a character whose like story is ended? And one of the, and I'll get into this a little bit later, but like it's different than the Star Wars prequels, in my opinion, where it's like, oh, people want to know this story. In my opinion, like I don't think people wanted to know more about Black Widow's story maybe like other comic book fans, but I don't think like large audiences of people wanted to see this story. That being said, I was like pleasantly surprised. I had fun with this movie. You know, it wasn't like as bad as I thought it was going to be. And I would say like overall, it's fine. You know, not offensive, but not like it didn't blow me away or anything. But like I was surprised by like. Yeah, I was surprised by how much I was just like, oh, this is fine. You know, this isn't like awful. But
no,
yeah, I don't know. Do you want to add anything? Because I'll get into like my notes later.
I had the same feeling when I watched it. It was like, why? Like it felt like I was watching this more for homework rather than I genuinely want to see Scarlett Johansson as Black Widow again. Because I already saw her story end. She helped save the universe by sacrificing and helping Hawkeye out instead of the opposite. Like she tumbles to her death, Hawkeye gets an Infinity Stone, and they like the Avengers save the world. I feel like if this movie was released somewhere like during like phase 1 or phase 2, like some of those early Marvel movies, this would have done a whole lot better. I don't think people would have said no to it. Even I know that like there's the whole like notion of like, oh, people don't want to see superheroine movies as much as superhero, which I think is like a whole bunch of bogus because these movies make a ton of money regardless. But I think that if you put out this movie in 2014 and say this is what Natasha was doing to help like before the Avengers or helping the Avengers or whatever, like it would have made a lot more sense story wise. But this just feels completely like out of place. Like, this is the first movie that we're going to put out after we just saw the world end and reappear back 2 years ago. It doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, mainstream audiences aren't going to be ready for, like, the change in stakes, right? And also, again, for not a new character, but a character whom we know how she dies. And, yeah, I completely agree with that. I think the issue with this movie is like what it is. Now, I know, so I looked it up because I was like, okay, when exactly is this movie taking place? It takes place between Civil War and Infinity War, which is, you know, fine, whatever. However, I don't think the setting of this movie matters. I don't think that it needed to take place between Infinity War and Civil War. There's, to me, no reason that it should have obviously she's being like hunted by the government or whatever, so maybe that's why there's some lines about Captain America not signing the Sokovia Accord or whatever it is. I forget the actual like name of it. And she's also didn't want to sign it, so they're like being hunted by SHIELD or whatever she's being hunted by. But it doesn't really affect the plot, really. Like it just kind of gives her a reason to be on the run. But like there could have been any reason for that to happen. There could have been any reason to be on the run. So I don't think that part mattered. And I think like when you're making a movie where the setting doesn't matter, it kind of like, it comes back to what I said earlier about choices, right? Like why are we why, what's the disadvantage or the consequence of making this movie set, like you said, in phase 1 or phase 2? Because I don't think there is one, you know, I genuinely do not think there is one. Besides the fact that it wasn't made in phase 1 or phase 2. But then like, why are we making this movie set in phase 3? Oh, it's because she dies at the end of phase 3. Well, okay, great. So why are we making this movie? And the other thing too is like, maybe this would matter more if for some reason Natasha, the character, was different between Civil War and Infinity War. If she had some sort of different personality, not personality like she changed as a person, but like she just evaluated things differently and made different kind of decisions, and like like we were just like, wait a second, like that's not the Black Widow I know or whatever. Then I think this movie would make more sense, because then we would be like, oh, like there was character development And we want to get back to that, but there is no character development. She's the same person between Civil War and Infinity War, which honestly does not make sense considering the fact that she's now like reconvened with her family. Like that, this doesn't make sense. And so I think that this movie existing kind of breaks up what would be considered like the canon of the MCU. Like I think that, like, I don't know.
It's a weird narrative gut punch, like just thrown into the mud, and we're just hoping it sticks. And for a standalone, like, there's nothing wrong with that. But then I'm reminded this is part of a larger ongoing story that's supposed to have some connective tissues between one franchise film and another franchise film, but it just doesn't bring in all of that. And I'm also tempted to, like, this is me just being like all comic booky. I wish that, because in the comics, Yelena is trained to like beat Natasha, but they're like actual family in this movie, so they kind of diverge from that. And it was interesting to see like that that dynamic, because I mean it was fun for the movie. I won't like throw away that, but it's weird because the movie is like, there's like two weird subliminal messages going on about like family and human trafficking is bad, which, yes, they're both, I agree.
So controversial.
So controversial. And, you know, I mean, those are not bad messages to put in a movie, but I feel like it wasn't cooked enough in the oven for those to completely materialize. So you just end up with this movie. Like, is, again, it's fine. It's inoffensive.
It's surface level.
Yeah.
It's surface level. You're right. Like, these are non-controversial themes, right? Family is important, obviously. Like, having a decent upbringing as a child is important. Like, these are themes that I think everyone would agree with. And there are ways to, like, not interrogate it, but kind of dig deep. In this movie, I think you're right. I don't think that it does that, which is, I guess, okay, right? Like, these are, you know, action superhero movies, and so it kind of makes sense. I did think Red Guardian was kind of like interesting. I think like there are some like interesting dynamics there. I can get into some things that, like, because I think we've tackled like the themes. I kind of want to get into like maybe like individual scenes or like things like that now about this film specifically. All right, so this movie to me, before we get into individual scenes, is basically the same vibe as Captain America: The Winter Soldier. There are like shots in this movie that are like, wait a second, why am I getting deja vu while watching this film? For example, when the Red Room collapses and it's being destroyed and like falling off of it, it reminds me very much of the scene in Captain America: Winter Soldier when the big sky carrier, the helicarrier, when that thing's crashing, right? And Captain America and Bucky are like fighting on it, and I'm just like, this is that. Like, this is like not shot for shot the same scene, but it's like they just took this one movie and basically made it look like this other movie, and just, I don't know. So I thought that was kind of lazy, and then I just remembered, man, The Winter Soldier was so good. Like, I love that movie. I think that might be one of my favorite MCU films. But then, you know, coming back to like, what's the point of this movie? I was like, maybe it's an origin story for her sister. I thought maybe since Natasha is dead, maybe what's her name, the sister's name, Yelena. I was like, maybe she'll, you know, have some sort of role on the Avengers. I don't know how they're going to work that. Do you want to talk about the post-credit scene now? And it's not ranking it, but just like talk about it now.
Yeah, because that's the one thing, right, that has to connect to the next franchise films, because Natasha's dead. Like, Natasha's gone, so we need something to get people to be excited for the next thing. So we have that. We have Yelena, right? She's at the grave of Natasha, and
wait, was that in the post-credit scene?
Was that?
Okay. Oh, maybe it was. Okay, hold on a second, because Disney Plus definitely might have cut. It must have cut one out, because the post-credit scene I saw was. Oh yeah, you're right. She is. Okay, you're right. My bad. I forgot that's where Yelena was. I was thinking that she was not there. I just remember someone I don't remember who came up to her, but basically talking about Hawkeye. And it sounded like she was going to go hunt Hawkeye down or go find Hawkeye or something like that.
She's a former Hydra member. Is who
got
she
it.
Is,
I haven't seen Hawkeye. Is Yelena in it?
Yeah, Yelena's in it. She actually does have some fun banter with Kate Bishop in that TV show.
That's cool. I didn't know that. All right.
So,
Okay, I was actually going to ask that question, so that makes sense.
So yeah, I mean, but yeah, there's again, like Black Widow. There's nothing that's mind blowing about it. I can't name you and this is honestly, this is gonna be another overarching theme too with all these movies, and I can't help but think about it. But one of my friends told me, like, because I was having a discussion with him about like the comedy in Ant-Man or something, and I know Ant-Man's not in the movie, but this has just been like an overall thing where, like, they write these movies that have dialogue made for Robert Downey Jr. without acknowledging
Spider-Man.
Right, I like not having those guys in the movie. Like, there's some that, like, the whole, like, when the family gets back together, you got the Red Guardian, he's like all happy, and I don't know if I didn't laugh at any of those scenes. Like, they just fall flat, and I don't know why, but it's just not for me. Like, the comedy just isn't hitting as hard, even if it did as much as, like, the MCU cringy jokes that some people signed up for.
Yeah, I mean, I've had that complaint about the MCU Avengers film, and we can get into that in a different episode. But yeah, like, I think some of the comedy is too campy. I understand that comic books are often campy. I totally get that. I totally vibe with it. But I do think that, like, different forms of media should have different tones or different deliveries or different types of execution. I don't think that you should kind of take, dialogue that you think could work in a comic book and put that into a movie, because that just isn't how, like, why would we have two different kinds of media then? Why would we even do anything like that, right? It doesn't make any sense. Like, the movies should feel a little bit more real. Not that, like, I don't know. I guess that's just my opinion, but yeah, I agree. I think that everyone is too like quirky, too quippy is the word I'm looking for. And it makes sense for Spider-Man, because that is very much Spider-Man's character. It makes sense for Deadpool. It makes sense for Tony Stark and Iron Man. But yeah, the Red Guardian, who just spent like decades in prison in Russia or something, it just seems like his psychology would be a little bit different.
Yeah, like, I was expecting like a PTSD like spy film, and this comes off now as like a half-baked attempt at telling us human trafficking is bad, to, oh, hey guys, we're gonna do a family reunion with our standard MCU formulaic tier dialogue. It just feels out of place.
You know what's funny you say that, because I literally wrote down that some of this movie reminds me, some of it, when Yelena and Natasha first are fighting in that, like, abandoned apartment or wherever they're fighting in, it reminds me very much of a scene from the Jason Bourne series. I think it's the first movie in the Jason Bourne series. I think it's Bourne Identity. I forget which one it is, but he's fighting this other assassin, and the combat is sick. It's very, like, personal and, like, quiet, right? Like, you're just focusing on the fight scene, which I think is really cool. And, like, the setting and cinematography kind of reminded me of that scene. I was like, oh, that's what this movie should be. It should be spies, assassins, stuff like that. And it gets too much in, like, the kind of, like, campy stuff, the quippy stuff that we've already talked about. One complaint, some complaints I said. I will say that I do like heist scenes / prison breakout scenes. So I was a fan of that part. I thought it was cool. Although, like, I was kind of just like, why are the Americans there when the Red Room? It's like Russia, right? I assume it's in Russia. Is this this huge American convoy just, like, drives across the Russian border or something? Like, to me, this doesn't. Am I tripping there? That was in Russia, right?
It's supposed. Yeah, we're in St. Petersburg. We're supposed to be near there.
Yeah.
This is the heart of the.
Yeah. So I'm like, what the hell is going on? Yeah. Like, I was I was literally just like, wait. Like, I thought, like, so anyways, there was, like, some stuff there, and then the second complaint I had, I think, is a huge plot hole, because when she's, like, meeting the main antagonist in the room, I forget, like, what his name is, the Russian bad guy, like, it was weird to me that, like, Natasha and her mom planned the whole breakout of the Red Room. They planned the face swapping thing. They planned all that. They even planned for her to sever the nerves in her nose to her brain so that she would, like, counter the pheromone thing, right? Like, they planned all this. So why didn't they plan for the red? Why didn't they give Natasha a vial or two of the gas to, like, fix the widows? You know what I mean? Like, to me, that makes zero sense. I genuinely don't understand how they could plan for all that and then not be like, oh wait, you should get a vial or two just in case there's some widows in there, because this is the guy that makes widows. Like, how are we not doing that?
It gives us like, could have given us 5 or 10 less minutes of fighting in that case.
Yeah. Yeah, which, like, you know, it's whatever. The fight scene between Natasha and the other widow, it's just okay, you know, it's whatever. Like, I don't know. So yeah.
A lot of people were complaining about Taskmaster got ruined because Taskmaster's supposed to, you know, the person in the suit.
Yeah. The villain or whatever.
Secondary villain, if you want to call it that. Yeah, I found that part like super. I was just like, yeah, another semi-iconic character ruined, but that's, you know, that's okay.
Yeah, I did remember people complaining about that, but yeah, I think, well, you know, because here's the thing: if Natasha has the red vial, then the whole fight scene at the end between Natasha and Taskmaster doesn't happen. You know, like, the movie just gets resolved so fast, and I think that's one of the issues I have. That's kind of a theme in these movies, is like, oh, like, this issue could be resolved if the main characters just didn't do something super dumb, or the writers / directors kind of just didn't assume the audiences were idiots. Which I think is also a theme here. But yeah, that's pretty much my thoughts on this. You know, overall it wasn't the worst, but I appreciated some of it, but I do think a lot of the execution was
left to be bad. Desired. But we talked about family earlier and being one of the
Can you hear my dog barking?
I can, yeah. But yeah, we talked about family earlier and how, you know, that was one of the themes that they tried to integrate in the movie. And another movie that obviously integrates it, I think, a lot better is Shang-Chi, which is the second movie of, you know, the 7. And I found this to be one of the stronger movies of the bunch, but maybe that's just me with the awesome choreography that was in the movie. But man, like, yeah, this was weird because I went out of the theater like being unsatisfied with Black Widow, but I found a lot more satisfaction in Shang-Chi.
Yeah, I agree. I did see Shang-Chi in theaters because I was interested. It was something new. It seemed interesting. I love martial arts movies. I'm a big fan of, like, I watched the original Bruce Lee movie, Jackie Chan, like, old school 80s film. You know what I mean? Like, I love these things. And I've watched like Ip Man and stuff like that. And so I'm a big fan of, like, martial arts movies. And I think this movie does do things that are good, and I do think that it kind of falls flat in other places, but I'll be honest. I think this movie peaks at the end of the third act, or the end of the first act is what I mean to say. The bus fight scene. I think that's probably like one of the best it's probably one of the best fight scenes in like all of the MCU. There might be one in like Winter Soldier or something that's better than it, but like that fight scene to me was like, this is a kung fu movie or a martial arts movie. You know, I was like, oh, this is sick. This is gonna be dope. But I was kind of disappointed by like the end fight scene. I do like the interpersonal stuff between him and his dad and family and stuff like that. But the end fight scene, I think it would have been better, or I would have liked it more if it was closer. Like, it just felt like they were so far away, and it, like, a lot of like the tension and almost like emotion is kind of, I don't know. I get the rings are like very like a kind of ranged weapon type thing. It makes like close combat kind of ranged, but I don't know. I just like, yeah, I love that fight scene in the beginning, and then I really wanted more of that, and I didn't get more of that. It's a sick fight scene, dude. I was like, when I saw that, I don't remember who I was with, but I just remember thinking, dude, this is sick. Like, this is an actual martial arts film, you know, in the MCU, which to me is sick. But yeah, and I'll let you take it from here. I do want to hear your. I have like another complaint, but overall, like, this movie is good. I liked it. But I have like, I guess I have two complaints that I think I'll touch on later. Yeah, but they're not like the movie itself is good. It's just like minor.
No, for sure. I mean, because this movie that gives you more reasons to think about like everyone involved there, right? Like, you understand what Shang-Chi is doing and what he's doing there. I love the villain in this movie. I loved Wen Wu as a character. Maybe that's just Tony Leung's performance, but it's a good enough sell to get you invested, and there's never a moment where I'm questioning his methods. Because I'm like, yeah, like he wants to save his family and help him because his wife died. But I also get that, like, yeah, he has a job to do. He got these 10 rings for a reason. Like, he was one of the most, bigger underground characters in the world. So it made a lot more sense to me. And I think where, like, most of the enjoyment for me just comes, like, it's a good visual, like, movie just in general. Like, there's not one part of the film, maybe the third act, because the third act I did feel was a little bit too long for its own good. But I mean, for the most part, like, the script is tight. Everyone there just, like, interacting, like, it all made sense to me, where like some of these other Phase 4 movies just fell flat. But there's just a lot more emotion and understanding in this film than there were in the others.
Yeah.
So that's that's where I'm coming up from. It's probably like one of my favorite Phase 4 movies. Not that it's going up
for
against
sure.
much, but it's a lot better than the rest, and I do appreciate them for trying something different, even if it didn't stick all the way for the whole movie.
Yeah, I like the style of it, for sure. I think so. My main complaint about this movie, I'm not gonna lie, is Awkwafina. I don't think she's funny. I actually think she's really annoying, which sucks because I don't want to dislike her, but it's just man, I don't know, man. Maybe I'm gonna piss some people off with this, but I legit, she reminds me of like Jar, like, yeah, from Phantom Menace. Like, that's what her character reminds me of in this film. And to me, that, like, I don't know, it's just like,
at least her voice isn't as bad as Jar Jar.
Yeah, that's true. It's close, but not as bad. One thing, and then the other thing, like, I remember when she's like training, like, she's like masters archery in like less than a day. I'm like, is she superhero or something? Like, I don't understand what's going on. Like, is she a super, like, I but obviously not. She's not. She's a regular person.
She's a regular person who's like pseudo in love with Sean, and that's it.
Yeah, but she shouldn't be able to like pinpoint accuracy shoot that arrow. You know what I mean? Like that, and like, dude, that's hard. Like, that's like an Olympic level sport, and I don't know. I like that part kind of. I don't know. Like, I get that they want her to have a part, like some sort of like purpose for being there, or like they want to give her something to do almost. But I just feel like it shouldn't have been her to do that. I feel like it could have been like anyone else.
There's also technically nothing wrong with having a love interest in a movie that just serves just to be there. Even like as a point of view character, like I think if she were just there to just like observe everything, like placed in a brand new world, you're away from home with this person who just told you my whole life is a lie, like this is what my life actually is. I think that would have probably landed a lot better if it were written like that instead of oh hey, she can do stuff now because she's attached to the hip with Shang-Chi.
Yeah, no, I agree. But yeah, that was, I don't know, I didn't have a lot of comments for this one, but yeah, let me see. Oh, I do like that Wong makes, kind of like a cameo almost in it. I like Wong. I think he's funny.
I love that. That's that fight scene at the beginning where he's just beating up the Abomination, which I also did not expect to be in the movie. I forgot that part, honestly. Like, 'cause it's been like 3 years since I watched it, and I wait, this Abomination, like a Hulk villain is in this movie, and it actually like works. Like, I can live with that.
No, it's cool. It is cool. Oh, you froze for a sec. I can't. Hello?
Yeah.
Okay. Good. Am I lagging at some points on your screen?
It's back and forth. Might just be. You're good. You're good.
Okay. Cool.
I'll cut it out.
But yeah, no, I love Wong's like cameo kind of thing. I think that's really cool. I like, that's one of the things that I think some of these movies do well is having some cameos. Where like it's a character that we know from a different film. And they kind of just appear, but not like in a weird way. They're kind of just like, oh, that's so-and-so doing so-and-so thing, but yeah, I think one of the things, I think this is a common, and this is to Marvel MCU, this is like just Hollywood in general right now. I do think a lot of like the CGI in the third act is going to age pretty terribly, and I think that like my evidence for this is going like, I haven't rewatched the original Black Panther movie in a couple of years, but I remember when I rewatched it, the ending fight scene is like
that
third
scene is like a it's PS2 graphics, honestly.
That's what I'm saying, man. And like, I don't know. I'll get to some of this. This wasn't the worst movie with the CGI, obviously. Like the movie, and I think we're gonna agree which movie has the worst CGI, but I'll save that for when we get to it because I'll let you know my opinion. I don't really have any other comments for Shang-Chi. I think that
it's a solid movie.
Yeah, it's solid. It's solid. Definitely in the sort of like upper tier of Phase 4 films, I would say, which isn't like saying much, but it is good for what it does. Even though I do have complaints.
It's also one of the couple of movies that I don't mind. Like, I want to see what they've got going on with the 10 Rings and everything else. Like, that actually sounds like cool world building that I can get around to. It's not just So I don't really have like big complaints with this, honestly. Like, it's a well done film. I can't be yapping too much about it.
Yeah, actually, I do want to say you're right. I will say is Shang-Chi is something that like it's a movie I'm excited to see the sequel of, and I think that's a really good sign. Like I would see the sequel in theaters,
which is more than saying enough than the next movie that we will be discussing, which is
what is it?
It's Eternals, and it took me 2 days to refinish this. I forgot. You know what? I don't think I watched this in theaters. I think this was a wait for Disney Plus thing for me, and obviously it made profit. I think it made like $200 million in profit, but man, there is just so much going on in this movie. I have no idea what your thoughts about it are, but man, it took me like it feels like 5 hours long, but it's not. And I hate that it feels like it's 5 hours long because there are good concepts like that are thrown in it. Yeah. Like, I don't mind the concept of, hey, like, what if these extraterrestrial beings that or might be around us, what if they were just like humans, or what do we think about those guys? But it just feels like they have so many meals set in the oven that when we eat, like, we get them out, it's like it's either they're undercooked or just fed too much at the same time. Like,
that's an interesting analogy. Yeah, I like, it's a longer movie, right? It's a long movie and there's a lot of characters, so it kind of makes sense for the movie to be longer. I think that this movie is actually underrated. I think that like because the order that I watched it in, I watched them completely out of order, but the first one I watched was the Marvels, then I watched Eternals, and then I watched Black Widow, then Multiverse of Madness, blah blah blah, whatever. But I was expecting this movie to be very bad, very, 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 very bad. But it was actually not as bad as like I think what some of the reviews were saying for me. Like, I was like, oh, like this movie does some things well. Like, I like a lot of the so here's the thing. I think and this is my opinion, I think that one of the reasons why this movie feels longer is because there are less fight scenes for how much power these characters have, if that makes sense. Yeah. And I think that makes it feel like it kind of drags. It almost feels like a Zack Snyder, directed this, where, which makes sense because I looked it up after, and apparently the director was inspired for Icarus of like Man of Steel style Superman, which makes sense considering like the choreography of his fight scenes, his flights, his, you know what I mean, his like just how he fights in general being an issue for people. It does seem like it's long, but I didn't have, outside of pacing, I was like, my only complaint is I think that the fight with Crow, his name's Crow, right? Yeah. The deviant villain. Yeah. The fight between Thena and Crow I thought was a little anticlimactic. I like that's like a sort of like complaint that I have, I guess. But I thought that the directing was bad. I thought the style was good, and I thought that like this like at least tried to take itself seriously, which I can't say for at least two of the other movies we're going to review in the future. And it felt like even though like some of the execution was off, it felt like the audience that this movie was going for was directed somewhere in like my general direction, which I don't think was the case for spoiler alert, some of the at least 2 of the movies that we're going to talk about. But yeah, like, I don't know. Maybe there just wasn't enough action. The movie does build a lot, though. I thought it built some of the relationships well. I thought some of the conflicts were managed well. I do like that a lot of the Eternals are kind of like partnered up. You have Sprite and Cersei. You have, I'm forgetting a lot of their names. There's so many of them.
That's what I'm saying. I think that was like one of my other, like, my main complaint just feels like it's too crowded. If there was more focus on a couple of these characters, or we spent more time with them, I think I probably would have liked it a lot more. Because that's the main thing, like, I have, at least for me, like, going against it is like, all right, I need to care about all of these characters in like 2.5 hours, and I only get to see like the main, like, these main peeps. Like, some are focused on more, and then some others are like just thrown in there.
Oh, totally.
But yeah, I mean, again, like, I'm in it mostly just to see, like, what are these characters, like, how does it go in, like, the grand, like, scheme and scale of things? Do we know when this was set? It's like present day, right? 2023.
It's after Thanos. Yeah, because they mentioned, like, oh, why weren't you here for Thanos? So it's after like, it is timeline wise, I think it's 2023 or 2022, whenever the movie was released.
Because that's what I'm interested in. Because I think there was like another line. I can't remember who said it, but they said that like Thanos apparently directly like linked up too. And the post credit scene too has Thanos' brother at the end.
Gross.
Yeah. Who's the definition of toxic masculinity in comics, but that's something I can get to later.
Is he? That's funny.
Yeah.
I have no idea about him.
Yeah. But anyways, I don't know. It feels like they could have just done a lot more in certain areas. Maybe this could have been like this would have been an epic TV show. Like, having all these people.
That's what I was thinking.
Like, having it, like, be sprawled 8 hours, like, give us time to fall in love with these seemingly complex characters, because that's what the movie wants them to be, and I can feel that. It's just that I think for what they were trying to do in the 2.5 hours, like, I don't think it's as bad as people say necessarily. It just doesn't stick for me as with I just would have loved to see more of these characters focused on, instead of us jumping around to one thing to another thing.
Yeah, I can totally feel that. I think that, like, for example, I think that, like, Gilgamesh could easily have not been in the movie. I think that Druig, or whatever his name is, could easily have not been in the movie. Like, he actually doesn't do anything. Like, you know what I mean? They spend, like, the second act in his village or whatever, like in the Amazon or wherever the forest they're in, and it, like, doesn't do. The only thing it leads to is Gilgamesh's death, so that Gilgamesh can get absorbed by the by Crow. Yeah, and like, other than that, like, I just didn't think that. I totally see what you're saying. Like, they easily could have just gone with Icarus, Sprite, Cersei, and that's really all they needed.
Yeah, that's all they needed.
Yeah,
but
because Cersei,
go ahead.
Because Athena was insignificant, but yeah, so I think you're right. Like, I did feel like that could have been a really good season 1, or even like a 6, not even 8 it could have been 6, like a mini series type thing, and it could have accomplished what I think it would have wanted to way better. But I think that's probably harder to sell. It brings in less money, so I think that's why they didn't do it. I did think one thing I really liked is I thought that, like, some of the fight scenes, I wish I could do more of in the Justice League films. Yeah. Like when Icarus and the Speedster are fighting. I don't even remember the Speedster's name. Like, I don't remember her name at all. Like, so, like, you know what I mean? Also, another character that just didn't need to be in there, So yeah, I totally get what you're saying. But I appreciate it because, like, it took itself seriously, and that's important. Although something, we get to one of the post-credit scenes, I was like, dude, this actually has me interested. Who the hell is Kit Harington's character? And I looked it up, and it's the Black Knight, or something like that. Is who he's supposed to be?
Got the blade.
Yeah. Which is cool. I was like, oh, that sounds cool. Like, I would love, like, sort of gothic sort themed MCU film. Again, as long as it takes itself seriously, right? Because one of the things that, like, I love the Spawn movie from 1999 or whatever it is. Like, I love that movie. I think it's sick. Even though, like, it's bad, but it's sick. And so, anyways, and lastly, I didn't know about Eros. I had to look up who he was. Although I do think that Harry Styles surprised. I didn't know that was Harry
That was
Styles. I
Harry
looked it up
Styles.
afterwards. I was like, oh, his acting seemed decent actually in this scene. You know what I mean? Like it didn't seem like he was out of place or something like that. I don't know. So I don't know about Harry Styles or Eros.
Eros is very much known as one of the biggest like womenizers / sexual assaulters in the Marvel universe. The most famous issue of him is being put on trial with She-Hulk tested and adjusted in there. That was it's a hilarious issue, but yeah, I mean like the guy is just, he might be like worse than Thanos in terms of violating
morality.
Yeah, morality and human rights, but you know, it is what it is. And
yeah, at least Thanos has some like redeeming qualities, right?
Mm-hmm.
What is Eros? Just strong and yeah.
He's Thanos' brother. But yeah, I mean, I am slightly interested to see some of these. Like I mean, Blade was in the last post. I don't know if because like the person who was talking to Black Knight was Blade, and they've
that's who that was. I didn't know who that was gonna be. Okay, so yeah, that's dope. I didn't know that at all. So yeah, like I would love again a sort of like gothic style grungy kind of Marvel film, you know what I mean? But if Blade's in it, that thing, it better be rated R. Like,
yeah,
you know what I mean?
Cut
like it's that's got to be rated R. Yeah, you're cutting people in half, like, you know what I'm saying? It's a vampire, like it's a vampire. There better be blood.
But yeah, I mean, Eternals, definitely an interesting, probably the most interesting movie of the bunch, just because of just the things that they were trying to reach with the cast and who they put in. I mean, you have like you got a lot of big hitters like freaking like Angelina Jolie's here, Salma Hayek's here.
Yeah,
like
I was like, damn. I was like, I didn't even know Angelina Jolie was in anything Eternals. I don't even think I saw a trailer for it. I had no idea she was. But yeah,
I did like that. You know, some of those are some of the last like people I expected to be in these movie like Marvel movies, but they were here. Like Marvel convey, hey, like we have a bag. Like act for us for like 6 to 8 months while we shoot, and you know, so yeah, that I think that was the most interesting part to me, is like, man, you guys got like these big A-listers that I thought would never be in a superhero film, but here we are.
Totally. Yeah. Did you see have you seen the series Heroes?
I've heard about. I haven't yet. No.
Okay, so the reason I ask is, did you ever watch Dragon Ball Z?
I did.
Okay, so because Crow was very much like Cell from Dragon Ball, you know what I mean? How he like absorbs people, gets stronger, and that's same thing with like what's this character in Heroes does named Sylar. Like Sylar would like kill people, open their brains and like eat a part of their brain or something, and then gain their superpower permanently. And I was getting like those types of vibes from Crow. And that's one of the reasons I was disappointed with the final fight between Crow and Angelina Jolie's character Athena. But yeah, like, I don't know. No, anyways, that was the last thing I wanted to complain about. I was like, dude, this had so much potential. It was like seemingly a villain that was going to be really cool. Got wasted. In my opinion. But yeah. Do we want to rank the villains? Is that something you said you wanted to
at the end of this whole thing? Like, okay. Once we run through everything else, and I mean, talk about villains though. I mean, this movie brought a lot of them back into the not only the regular canon fold, but sort of sprawled this whole multiversal effect on us because of the Spider-Verse movie, Spidey No Way Home, the third installment of the Tobey Maguire films, and what was. I watched this movie like 3 times in theaters, and on top of that,
Tobey Maguire. You said Tobey Maguire films.
Tom Holland, even though Tobey Maguire is in here, but spoilers, whatever. It's, you know what? I had a conversation with Coach Sid about this. If you guys don't know who Coach Sid is, she was my teacher last year for public speaking, and she also, it's funny. For my persuasive speech, or for the final speech for our like class or whatever, I told Coach Sid, yo, I want to do a Spider-Man persuasive speech, and got it like approved like 1 month before she, I guess, gave the assignment out. And so I talked about. I made the persuasive speech was on Tom Holland is not a good Spider-Man, and here's why. So I referenced this movie a decent bit, and I got 105 on the speech, but it's a movie, like, it's weird because I'm rewatching some of these, like, because I watch this with clips because I don't have Stars and it's not on Disney Plus, so I watch clips on YouTube, but I feel like this movie was specifically edited for the movie audience.
Oh, 100%. I have the same comment. I have the exact same comment, and I have a specific scene that we can get into. But you're exactly right. You're 100% right. I 100% agree with you. Sorry, go ahead. I didn't want to interrupt you, but I was just like, oh, yeah.
Yeah, no, it feels, because you have these, like, long pauses between, hey, the Green Goblin is here, and then he says, like, one thing or nothing, and then you're supposed to, like, yeah, Norman's back. And I'm like, I don't know if I feel, like, I don't feel the same way when I'm in my living room. Like, I get it if, like, you know, I'm in a crowd with a whole bunch of other people, like, but I just don't feel the same way when I'm watching it on my couch.
Totally. I 100% agree. Like, for one, I'm a sucker for anything with Willem Dafoe in it. I will just watch it. I love Dafoe. I also love his Green Goblin. I like Spider-Man to the first Tobey Maguire movie is like, so, like, I love that movie. I grew up with that. You know, I don't know, came out in 2003 or probably something like that. But I love Green Goblin. I love him in it. And yeah, I agree. This movie kind of falls flat if you're not watching it in theaters. Like, if you are not seeing this with a huge crowd of people who have never seen this film before, you're going to be like, what's happening here? Like, specifically, like, when the other Spider-Men show up and they, like, walk through Andrew Garfield walks through the portal and it's not Tom Holland. It's like super awkward because there's just like this really long pause and you're just awkwardly staring at the screen. You're just like, and he's just like it almost seems like Andrew Garfield is waiting for you to clap for him. Like that's what it feels like. And that obviously doesn't happen when you're just watching this on your couch by yourself or watching this for the second time because you know what's happening. And there were a lot of leaks, so I kind of knew they were going to be in this film before I saw it. That's one of the reasons I saw this in theaters is because I knew they were going to be in it. I did not see the second Spider-Man Tom Holland movie. I just never watched it. I was like, yeah, not really interested. So I never saw it. But I saw this one because I wanted to see these characters again. That being said, like, the overall plot is fine, you know, like the multiverse stuff.
I mean, it's like, it's all dicey and stuff. It's not anything that's gonna like blow you away. It's like, oh, these guys are all converging into this one thing because Peter Parker made a very, very stupid mistake that he shouldn't have because he's irresponsible for whatever in all the movies he's in, honestly. But yeah, I think that's just a casualty, I think, of what this movie is and represents as a whole, because it's supposed to be technically a celebration. It's supposed to be two things, right? It's a celebration of all of it and the acknowledgement of Disney being like, we might not get Spider-Man back, so let's just throw everything at a wall and hope that it sticks. And it also made them a bunch of money, so I guess it worked out. You know, you don't say no to Spider, especially like nowadays. Like, he's one of the two biggest pop culture icons we have. You have kids who love these characters, but I mean, it's just a whole triad mess of. This was one thing I said in my persuasive speech. I said that, you know, when Spider-Man gets bit with the radioactive spider that like makes it, like, gives him all these powers, he learns that, hey, like, I want to use this power for good, and I want to honor the promise I made to Uncle Ben and my family that, yeah, like, with great power comes great responsibility. He doesn't have that same sense of responsibility in this movie. Like, it takes him the whole movie to figure out, like, oh, I actually need to be responsible. And it's maddening to me because, I mean, I love the Tobey movies just because, yeah, the guy learns stuff and he grows each movie.
They're good.
Yeah. It just feels like Tom's character has been so static, even though he does look like the part of a Peter Parker. It just doesn't feel like it has that same. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think that's something that I said about the Black Widow. Right? It's like there's no change in character for this movie. Like, what is the purpose of this movie besides for things to happen? And obviously, like, there's a meta purpose of this movie. You already touched on that. Like, the Disney doesn't know if they're gonna get Spider-Man back, whoops, or ever. So they're kind of just like, let's just go all out, right? Which totally makes sense. I totally get it, but that doesn't mean the movie has to be, or the character has to be static. Doesn't mean the character has to like never change throughout one film, or in this case, 3 films. And so I think that's something that is super important. I sometimes, like, even before we planned on doing the podcast, I would like go back and watch like the Green Goblin scenes just because
they're so good. Again,
I love Willem.
They're so good.
They're so sick, man. And I think that Willem Dafoe by far. I mean, again, I open this up saying I am biased towards Willem Dafoe. I love Willem Dafoe, but I think he by far steals the show. Like, and to me, it's not even close. Like, not even close. And yeah, maybe that says something about Tom Holland. Maybe it's because shoved Tom Holland down throats, but you know.
I just think Tom Holland should get beat up more. Well, not beat up more often, just like beat up more often in a way that it makes sense because he's Spider-Man and not because he's some like irresponsible teenager trying to get. Like, this whole thing is him trying to get into college, and all of his friends can't get into college because they know their identities, which is a stupid plot thing. But like, I can't say anything about that in like the case of writing, right? Because like we're all happy that, hey, Toby and Andrew are back. And like for me, I didn't see any of the leaks. I was actually one of the fortunate ones enough to like not know that any of these characters were happening. So for me, like, I was overjoyed. So my experience with this was different. I didn't watch any of the interviews of that, but you know, I mean, I completely agree with you. Willem's like, he's awesome. I also love Alfred Molina back as Doc Ock. I love his sense of charm. And also, like, he learns from the previous, like, from Spider-Man too. Like,
yeah, Doc Ock has more character development than the protagonist, which is not good.
That's not a good thing, especially for a movie called Spider-Man No Way Home. But no, like I just don't feel like it's cool. Like, we finally got the Spider-Man origin story, but it took them 3 movies and a multiverse event for him to like actually like grow up and be like, that should not happen. You should have learned that at the first movie and sense of that onset. Yeah, it's just sad.
For the meta part of it, I do totally understand why they didn't kind of do a basic origin story for the first film, because we've seen it before. We've seen it with Tobey Maguire, we saw it with Andrew Garfield, and people are like, oh man, is Uncle Ben gonna die? Like, you know what I mean? Like, so I totally get that, but I don't know. I think maybe like people just know the story already. Maybe there doesn't need to be an actual like, you can have character development without an origin story, right? Like, you don't, you know, it comes back to the same comment about Black Widow. Like, her character doesn't make any meaningful changes in the film or between multiple films. So why does this exist as an art form rather than just put people in movie theater seats? And I think that a lot of this film, Far From Home, as much as like it is fun to watch, especially if you haven't seen it, or, you know, hopefully people watching, if you see this, you've seen this film already, but it's fun to watch if you haven't seen it, especially in theaters. Otherwise, I don't think I'll ever watch the movie again. I'll just watch the Green Goblin clips. Yep. Because that's, you know, like, and the Alfred Molina clips, because I agree, he's great as Doc Ock. But yeah. And anyway, the Venom scene would be more interesting to me at the end, the post-credit scene, if the Venom movies were good. But
yeah,
they're not.
I don't care for. Gosh, I hated that second movie. Like, the first one, I could pass for it because it's one of the. See, that movie for me, like, I watched it with a couple of friends in theaters, and we just like mocked the whole first Venom movie like throughout. Yeah. Because it's not a good movie, and yeah, the second one, I can't even enjoy it on spite. Like, that's just generally not a good film. But I mean, just for me, I love Spidey, or at least I've grown to love Spidey because this movie and the persuasive speech that I did for in public speaking got me to read the first 200 issues of Amazing Spider-Man. Like, I actually went and sat down and read Stan Lee, Steve Ditko, John Romita Jr.'s whole entire 115 issue run, and then some of the writers that came after it. Just to learn, like, what is 616 Peter's supposed to be like. And I'm glad that like at the end we get the tease of, hey, he's actually like Spider-Man swinging. I wish that he were like that in all of the films that I've watched him be in, but
yeah,
it's unfortunate.
Yeah, the Spider-Man movies are just so saturated too. I know we're spending a lot of time on this. Man, the Into the Spider-Verse series is just so cool and different. And that one is, you know, like it does a lot of the things that Spider-Man is supposed to be, and it executes them well. And I think that Far From Home doesn't do that. You know, Tom Holland's version doesn't do that. So I totally get it. And I was just thinking about this while you were saying this. Like, I still will quote the original Spider-Man film with Tobey Maguire. I'll say quotes. I love saying Godspeed, Spider-Man. You know, like Green Goblin or something. Or doing the Macho Man Randy Savage, like, you're going where? But like, there's nothing like that in this film, you know. And it's still Willem Dafoe, but why aren't I quoting him? Because even it's the same character, it's the same actor. The character is written to be the same, but the execution is off. It's not, the movie itself is not as memorable, it being this ensemble cast type of thing, you know.
I agree.
And yeah, that's my finishing thoughts on it.
I agree.
Yeah.
If the whole movie were just you know the scene where they're in the apartment or whatever, and they're experimenting to make sure, like, hey, can we cure all of these villains? And then at last minute, Norman's just like, nah, man, I'm gonna wreck this entire thing. And if we had more scenes like that, I would like completely love this movie. I died
100%.
I never felt more tense.
And then slamming Spider-Man like through the condo wall floors and stuff like that. God, that seems so sick.
That's what I like read and watch Spider-Man for. I want to see this guy get punched, man. He's not supposed to like. You know what? I mean, we can make a whole movie. Like, maybe we should do that, like, in the future. Like, do a
Spider-Man only movie.
Spider-Man only, or like Tom Holland only movies, and figure out what we can try to fix in the canon. But I mean, that's what I felt about this movie. And also, Doctor Strange shows up in this, which also leads to the next movie that we're gonna talk about. Doctor Strange: Multiverse of Madness, which is also coincidentally directed and screenplay partly written by Sam Raimi, who's one of my favorite directors just because of, well, not only nostalgia, I mean, he's an awesome director. So when I heard that, man, like, we're gonna get Sam Raimi back to do this film, it's gonna be like a continuation from where he was in No Way Home and Scarlet Witch's like whole arc in WandaVision, I was on board. I was set. And then I watched the movie.
Dude, so I thought we were gonna disagree on this, because we had kind of mentioned like Sam Raimi and stuff, and like obviously Spider-Man 3 flat, like it's just it's doing too much. And honestly, like before I saw Multiverse of Madness, I thought Spider-Man 3, like especially with how bad it is because it's doing too much, they kind of thrown Venom and all this stuff. I'm talking Tobey Maguire Spider-Man. I kind of chalked that up to being the studio, the producers being like, Sam Raimi, you have to do this, you have to make it this way, blah, 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 blah. And not letting the director direct, right? That's what I kind of felt like. But then I saw this movie, and I was like, maybe Sam Raimi either A, got a little bit too big for his britches, or B, maybe his style has been outgrown by like pop culture in general. I don't know though, because I would like to go back and watch the Tobey Maguire film, especially 1 and 2, but I imagine those still hold up. But my issue, like, I don't know, I have a lot of complaints about this film, and this is one of the films that I thought was going to be in the upper tier, and to me, I don't know. What are your thoughts? I was not a fan of this movie.
It felt like oddly flat in some parts. Like, the thing I love most, I'll say that the thing I like the most, this may be just a me thing, but I loved Elizabeth Olsen's evil portrayal of Wanda Maximoff, just because it gave her something more to do than just like, hey, I'm like the brother of Pietro Maximoff, or I need to like make sure Vision is okay. like her going like all out and ballistic as this, like, I need to like get my own future like reined in because I don't know if I'm gonna continue to like live longer. I thought she was brilliant. That's most of where the praise ends for me. And maybe some of those like horror scenes, because some of the like, and this is another thing too when we talk about Thor, which is going to be the, you know, the next part, but like some of those like shots, like where you're just like, man, if like some of those shots, if I wish that I had exact scenes that I could talk about. I feel like, oh, like this is a cool different thing that I'm not used to seeing in like MCU movies, where it feels like, oh, this is a Sam Raimi touch. It just doesn't permeate through the whole movie. You still get some of that like same bland formulaic MCU.
The quippiness. Yeah, it's like, oh, this is it. Like, it doesn't commit to anything, and I think that's an issue because it doesn't commit to being what seems like it would be like a horror suspense film with some of the scenes in it, right? And I get it's an MCU film, so it has to have like a level of action that is achieved, and the action, I guess, is achieved, but I like, yeah, like there were some horror scenes in there. Man, am I something like what? Because like I was like, oh, this is sick, and then all of a sudden it was like, oh wait, no, this isn't a horror film. Someone's making a joke, or all of a sudden, you know, something else is happening that is almost unrelated, right? And so I totally agree with you there. My complaints are, I think the dialogue in a lot of it is really bad.
I agree.
And I think there's too much going on in this film. I think that this film almost could have been a series as well. Like, and I know WandaVision was a series. I didn't actually finish WandaVision. I started watching it and I was like, okay, I'm kind of tuning out of this. But also it's because, like, you know, I didn't think the Scarlet Witch was that interesting of a character. And maybe that's why, because of the things you said, right? She doesn't have a purpose besides, oh, is Vision okay? Or being so-and-so's brother. And so I totally get that. But she's supposed to be like one of the most powerful. I mean, she should be one of the most powerful characters in the MCU. And I think this movie showcases like how powerful she can be, but we haven't seen that in any other movie or anything besides this. And so it kind of sucks, because I'd love to see her like throwing down with Thanos or something, you know, or some really powerful character, at least like holding her own. And I don't know. But so going back to it, I think that I like where they take her direction with like the character. I do not like, is it Elizabeth? Yeah, Elizabeth Olsen's voice when she's doing it. Her voice sounds shaky the entire time, like she's trying to sound like someone's grandma, even though she's like 35 years older. And I think that kind of throws, she's like, I want to see my sons. And I'm like, cool. I don't know. Like that, I don't know.
I think they've told her to like change her voice like at least 8 different times in all of these movies, because you compare her to like every single thing that she's been in, she does not sound the same. And like we started off in Age of Ultron, she has this super bad Russian accent. It's like, why have the accent? Just drop it.
Dude, I remember that. Wow. I forgot about that.
It's not good. It's not a good thing to listen to. And then like drop it, and then I mean, she's just been in so many different projects, and that's something like I don't put on her in general. Like like all the directors are telling her to like do this, and they've all had different visions.
Oh yeah.
But I mean, just the other thing too, like the same thing here. I think that we sort of talked about within the last movie that we talked about, No Way Home. It's a cameo fest. It's a cameo fest of utter proportions where it didn't need to be.
Yeah. So I have a lot of complaints about this, because this was the biggest disappointment of phase 4. Like I thought, because I liked the first Doctor Strange, but I thought that this was going to be good, and I just hadn't seen it. I didn't end up seeing it for whatever reason, right? And so when I was going to see this, I was kind of excited. But like, let's just start from the beginning. The beginning, you know, obviously there's the dream sequence and stuff, but he's at his like ex-lover's wedding, right? His ex-partner's wedding, Christine. And this is just not how people behave. I'm going to like summarize the scene very quickly, because this would never happen in real life, right? And I understand there's magic, there's aliens, there's all this other stuff, but this would not happen in real life. He is at this woman's wedding, who is his ex-partner that I don't remember, because I didn't rewatch the first film, but he starts telling her about his, like, the conversation basically starts with him telling her his feelings for her at her wedding. And then like that in any real world scenario is a huge red flag. No one should ever, because at someone's wedding, they do not care about you. This is their wedding. This is their wedding reception. It's their party. They don't think, oh man, but what if I was getting married to Doctor Strange? That would never happen. And then she's receptive to it. That makes zero sense. This would never happen in real life. Like, and then like that's like the extent of their interactions in the movie, because the rest of the relationship is with a different Christine. But the audience is supposed to treat them like they're the same Christine. The conclusion of the movie, and I wrote this down because this is like actually very upsetting. The conclusion of the movie, I will say this. The conclusion of the movie's dialogue is that Doctor Stranges are all the same. They all, and the wording they use is they always got to be the. However, the movie paints a different argument. If all the Stranges are the same, all the Stranges we've seen before this were failures in different ways, but our Strange succeeds. Why? Because he's the same as the others? That doesn't make any sense. So why does this Strange succeed? Obviously because they're different. They're not all the same, which would be, again, why does the resolution between Doctor Strange and Christine happen with a different Christine? It makes zero sense, and it's kind of just like it's kind of lazy in my opinion. Like, I just think that like they just wanted to have a love interest in it, and they were just like, oh, we'll just do this, even though to me it makes zero sense. The other problem I have is you're exactly right about the cameo fest. I thought when I first saw like still frames of like Xavier and Jim from The Office as Mr. Fantastic, I was like, oh, that's clearly like the post-credit scene. I didn't know that was the entire second act. Now, this is the issue I have. Like, the entire second act could be remedied if the Illuminati just changed their answer from no to yes. Mm-hmm. Like, it's literally just like they are being like needlessly contrarian. It's like arguing with your uncle at Thanksgiving who's trying to explain to you that the world is flat. And for whatever reason, like the Illuminati obviously know that the Book of the Dead is in Scarlet Witch's hand. They know how strong it is. They know it's in her hands. And instead of accelerating Doctor Strange to GTFO of their universe, they are holding him captive. And they themselves admit that the longer he's there, the more dangerous it gets, because like the universes can collide or whatever it is. So why are they holding him here longer? It makes zero sense. Like, what? And then like, obviously there's like the different version of Captain Marvel in it. And I have complaints about Captain Marvel, like the MCU version of Captain Marvel, and I'll get to that later. But one of the things you talked about is like there's too much going on. I want to summarize the different conflicts in this film. I'm just going to list them. I'm not going to summarize. I'm not going to explain them because I feel like I'm spending too much time talking. But we have Strange and Christine. That's where it opens, right? Fine, whatever. We have Strange and a different Christine. Great, cool. We have Strange and Scarlet Witch. We have America and Scarlet Witch. We have Strange and the Illuminati. We have Strange in the Book of Ashanti, because that he's searching for this book. He finally finds it, and then it burns. And you're like, oh, wow, now how's our character going to get out of this one, right? And so it's a different plot element. Then we have Strange versus Strange for the Book of the Dead. Then we have Scarlet Witch and her own alter ego. And there's so many more that I'm probably not listing, but I just feel like there was too much for one movie to tackle, and I think that this could have worked better as a series, especially with like, because like obviously like Scarlet Witch isn't a total villain, she's an Avenger, and so I understand why like her inner, like a lot of her, like her conflict is interpersonal, obviously, or it's internal conflict, and I totally get that. But I think that this movie didn't have the time to flesh it out, because it's trying to somehow develop Doctor Strange, but in the end he doesn't change, because the movie tells us he's the same, even though it doesn't. You know what I mean? I don't know. So yeah, those are my thoughts. I wanted to like this movie. I thought it was going to be good. Pointed because I wanted to see Sam Raimi directing another superhero film. And
no, I mean,
yeah.
I completely agree with you. It's sort of unfortunate because, I mean, I had a lot of big anticipation for this one too, because I thought the first Doctor Strange movie was okay, but I enjoyed it enough.
Yeah.
But
I liked it.
Yeah. But then you throw out like, hey, we got one of the greatest superhero movie directors of all time. He's coming to Marvel, and like, yeah, we'll get a different flair than what we've had for a lot of these like stale formulaic MCU movies. And then you get this, and it's just like you're getting all of these different ideas thrown at a wall, and it's sort of unfortunate because I like Steven's fine enough. I like Wong. I like America Chavez in the comics, but she's just technically annoying teenager in this movie, which is super unfortunate. And I mean, like, for me, like, the thing with the cameo was I thought the Illuminati were like gonna have a bigger presence in this movie, just because of like the comics I gave you. A lot of the like some of the inspiration for this movie is from like directly from it, where you're like, oh, like we have this like super secret superhero cabal that in secret like make all of these decisions, whether universes like are, you know, raised up or they fall or whatever the case may be. And all we get is you're just gonna get Scarlet Witch slaughtering all of them. I mean, why even bother bringing back Professor like we brought back Mr. Picard, you know, like
Sir Patrick Stewart, dude.
And we're just treated with this, and it's I can't be even more disappointed. I thought he was gonna be so much cooler in this movie, but he's just there as plot device, and it's unfortunate. But it's not.
I agree.
It's not as unfortunate as this movie that we're about to talk though, because gosh, you know, I thought we changed the direction too with Thor, with Ragnarok, because like like fun movie, and then we get this like by the same director and most of the same actors and actresses, and we're treated with this.
So here's the thing. I love Taika Waititi. I hope I'm pronouncing I think he's like New Zealand, he's New Zealander, but I love his work. I think he's hilarious. I saw What We Do in the Shadows. Have you seen What We Do in the Shadows?
That's a great movie.
I love that movie. That is one of my favorite movies of all time. I think it's so funny and so well made. And I loved Thor Ragnarok. I thought Thor Ragnarok was a great change in the right direction. I thought that it still keeps a lot of the quippiness, which is total but it makes it work, right? And like Thor Ragnarok itself, like I love the style, the visuals of it. It's very like it feels retro, like retro sci-fi, you know. And this movie, you know, like it's like there's some things. So okay, I'll just be up front. Like Christian Bale is wasted in this film.
He is.
I forget the character. What's his name again?
Gore the God Butcher, who is the villain of one of the best modern Thor stories we've had.
He is super wasted, bro. I'm like, you wasted Christian Bale on like for a one-off, man. Come on, dude.
Sense.
What are we doing, man?
It's so unfortunate too, because I saw he was gonna be Gore the God Butcher. I was like, oh man, he's gonna be awesome. He's gonna he's going to be slaying some fools with, you know, the classic Christian Bale. I'm going to dominate this film and steal the show. But we got the opposite, right? Where we only get to see him kill one god, and that's it. And that's like,
that's not a butcher, in my opinion.
It's not. No. Like, I was like, you know what? I had this major scene rewind. I told my friend like directly after this, because I watched it with a couple of friends after the movie. I said, if we change the scene where they're at like the Temple of the Gods or whatever, instead of saying, Gore the God Butcher is like known for like killing these different types of high level beings, instead of saying that, how about he goes in and slaughters like a good 80% of them?
Exactly, dude. Like, they had the gods there. They had them there. He could have killed like a bunch of the major ones, right? Not whatever, Hercules or whoever the other people are, but like they could have killed a bunch, man. And like, it's just like it feels like, oh, this movie's technically PG-13, but make it rated PG at this point. Like, there's no stakes, you know. I mean, obviously, like Natalie Portman, you know, whatever. But like, I just mean like grand scheme of things, right? When we're talking like the scale of the MCU, there were virtually no stakes here. It did introduce like Hercules, Zeus, or Ares and Zeus, or whoever they're supposed to be. I forget what they're, you know, the model after Greek, whatever, or Gladiator, whoever the hell. I don't know. I'm not super familiar with the comics, so to me it's just like, oh, cool, Roman themed, great. But like, I just the villain itself, the antagonist. Oh man, it just.
I mean,
I like Christian Bale, man.
I love Christian Bale. Like, there is not one movie in it where I haven't like not liked his performance, and he genuinely does try his best to bring the script up, but there's nothing there, so there's nothing to elevate.
Yeah, he's phenomenal. I mean, yeah, you're right. Okay, I don't want to go back to a movie that we previously discussed, but one of the things I think that gets away from films is like they're almost like a holistic kind of look at things, right? Because, so for example, Multiverse of Madness has a phenomenal cast, but a lot of the dialogue and acting seems off, right? And like you're talking about, like, phenomenal actor, one of the best of like the last 2 decades. And it just, it's even his performance for what, like, obviously, like, he's great, he's working with what he can, but it's just like largely forgettable, and that's like, how do you get a Christian Bale? I think maybe we mentioned this. I think we mentioned this party, but it's like Obi-Wan. It's like Ewan McGregor in the Obi-Wan series. Like, it's like you have a phenomenal actor and you wasted it, and you kind of just. But yeah, so I don't know. I think this was the biggest disappointment. No, actually, either Multiverse of Madness or Thor: Love and Thunder were the biggest disappointments for me. There's that one guy, you would know his name. He's got like a bird head, and he's with Thor a lot. Like, he's in a lot of Thor stories. He's got a mace.
Beta Ray Bill?
Yes. I thought I don't know why, but I thought this would have been a good movie to.
I agree. That's what that's what a lot of my friends who love that character, that's what they were expecting, like, at least a cameo in this film.
It kind of makes sense because you have Natalie Portman, like, kind of, right? And it would make sense that you bring in kind of like another Thor clone into this film and introduce Beta Ray Bill into like the MCU, because he's you look at this guy and he's weird. Like, you see a comic, you're like, what is he, some sort of bird thing? Like, what the hell is he? Like, what are his powers? Like, he's like, oh, he's kind of like Thor, but not exactly, but kind, like, very much like him. You know what I mean? And I don't know. I think this would have been the perfect movie to introduce Beta Ray Bill.
Yeah, best part about him too is, like, he's also worthy of wielding Mjolnir, because, like, not everyone can do that. We've seen in a good chunk of these, like, Avengers movies and films, like Hulk tries to, like, lift the hammer. He can't. Like, you got the whole scene in Ultron where all these Avengers are trying, but we get introduced
Captain America.
Oh, he did.
Yeah, Captain America. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
No. But yeah, like, you get, like 99.9% of the universe is not worthy. I mean, that's the whole thing with Thor. Like, that's why we had the first movie about him, and even, like, taking away from the source material, like, that's the whole essence of his character. So getting away from that, and just doing this schlock, like, even with the whole will they, won't they, because there's two things, right? You've got the will they, won't they between Jane and Thor Odinson, and then you got the will they, won't they of the Stormbreaker and Mjolnir thing with Thor. That was, like, super weird, but it is what it is. And I mean, that's like the gist of it for me, where it's there's just so many weird conflicts in this movie that are trying to get away from the whole. We have supposedly a character that is killing all of these supernatural beings that we don't get to see, and it's all wasted on pretty awful dialogue and banter. And I love Taika, but
me too, dude.
I don't know what happened here.
This, to me, okay, so this is something similar to, like, Sam Raimi, very, that, like, has a history of doing some good films, right? Like doing very well made films. And this movie, for whatever falls flat, this is an easy movie for, like, maybe the studio stepped in, maybe Disney stepped in, like, we need to do this, like, you have to include these parts in the movie, right? Kind of like how in Spider-Man 3, I believe Sony was like, you have to include Venom in Spider-Man 3 to Sam Raimi. But, like, so maybe something similar happened with Taika Waititi. Like, maybe they were like, no, you can't do this, you have to have these elements, and maybe that kind of does it, or that kind of, like, gets to this, like, sort of, like, weird thing that, it just doesn't feel like a complete film. And yeah, but there was something you said something earlier while talking about Thor: Love and Thunder that kind of triggered this thought in my head that I think more movies would be better, or more MCU movies would be better if instead of trying to do some grand scale thing where it's like the end of the world or the end of like these significant characters, it's almost like an adventure, right? Like this is a mission, right? Because this is how the comics are. It's not always some crazy world-ending threat going on or something like that. And but yeah, I don't know. I just think that like it could have, if they didn't want, if they don't waste the God Butcher on this film, you know, maybe make him maybe bring him in later on, you know. But yeah, so anyways, that was kind of what that, yeah.
No, I mean, I feel you in the same way there. It's also like the whole thing, like we could have gotten a cool character study between Thor and Jane considering that she has cancer now, and how do you deal with that, and also somehow now being worthy to wield Mjolnir. Like, I think that's a very, like, I mean, that's the whole thesis of the comic book run that this movie is based on, that was written in the mid-2010s, where Jane Foster, like, because Thor, for a very stupid reason that I won't get into, like, loses his like, he's just completely unworthy. He gets his arm cut off. He can't wield Mjolnir. But Jane steps in, wields the hammer. No one knows who she is. But then you realize, like, oh, like, this is how a human, if she were a god or elevated up to this platform, would handle this in this situation. But we get none of that because we're more focused on, oh, hey, like, is she in love with Thor again? Are they going to get back together? And
yeah,
it's super disappointing. And I still wish, like, maybe in an alternate universe they made a really good adaptation of the God Butcher saga, and we get a cool Christian Bale moment where he wrecks some fools and stabs and cuts off some heads. It's just not in this universe, and it's a shame because there is I mean people love Ragnarok, and I thought we were headed in the right direction. Now it's like, man, Chris Hemsworth doesn't even want to make Thor movies anymore. So
yeah, it sucks, but no, yeah, I mean, I totally get it, man. I agree. I remember it's like Thor and Jane, what's her name, Foster, or no?
Yeah,
Jane Foster. Are like, when he first realizes that's who has who has Mjolnir. Like, that scene is like interesting, right? Because you're like, oh, they're gonna meet up, and it does it like the tension. That's kind of like where the tension kind of stays throughout the whole thing, because it's like you said, the will they, won't they. But I'm remembering that fight scene, and it's like, I don't know. I'm also getting kind of tired of like faceless monsters being bad guys. You know what I mean? Like, in like these CGI faceless monsters being bad guys that kind of just like look like Zerg from StarCraft.
Yep.
And yeah, and it's kind of just like, okay, are there other like obviously, like, they don't want to just be killing people all the time, I guess, because kids watch the films, but at the same time it's kind of just like, man, like, this is it seems like we're getting formulaic almost. But yeah, anyways, that was the last comment I had on.
Yeah, no,
I
mean,
if you have anything else.
I mean, I completely agree with you. It's just, you get to a point where you are elevated to, like, hey, like, I cannot believe that Thor, out of all characters, right, is getting the fourth movie in the MCU, right? Like, the first since Christopher Reeve's Superman back in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah, it's like, breaking the trilogy, right?
And now it's just like, it's a weird cast-off adventure, and I mean, like, yeah, I mean, the faceless weird villains like this should be much better written if we're to empathize or at least understand. You know what? If the movie had more scenes like the one where they're like on the moon and they face the God Butcher there, and you had stakes there, maybe I'd probably enjoy it more, because it has like that Taika flair and it's completely different, the tone from the rest of the movie. I just can't bring myself to think like this is an MCU flick, and again, I can't, like, yeah, just a lot, like, big theme with Phase 4 is just super disappointing. But another, like, the last movie that we're going to talk about, who doesn't have a faceless villain, completely different from The Cut, and the last one we're going to be talking about is the send-off to Chadwick Boseman's unfortunate death back 5 years
Oh
ago.
wait, we missed the Marvels. This is the last one.
Oh, we're
We
not
haven't talked
talking
about the Marvels yet.
but Marvel's isn't a Phase 4 film. It wasn't on the
Oh,
list.
it's not?
No.
Oh, why did I watch it then, dude?
I don't know. I said
Oh, I wasted time watching that movie. Okay,
We
yeah,
can-
you're
we-
right. Okay.
we can have a Phase 5 talk
Oh.
later though.
Yes, sure. Okay, anyways. But yeah, okay, we'll go back. Okay, Wakanda Forever. Anyways, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, this is again, the send-off to Chadwick Boseman's unfortunate passing half a decade ago, which honestly is still insane to me. Because I don't think we knew, I don't think anyone knew about he was battling diseases for the last couple months of production for this movie and Avengers and everything else. And so Ryan Coogler and the rest of the gang had to rewrite the script from the ground up. And honestly, I think he did as well as he could considering the circumstances, because that's not easy to hey, the main star of your show is gone, and that's what the movie was supposed to be on.
Yeah. Yep. I completely agree. I have a couple very minor complaints, but I think overall Wakanda Forever to me was actually I think the most pleasant surprise out of it, because I did not see this movie in theaters because I didn't want Black Panther without Chadwick Boseman, because I really liked him as Black Panther.
I think everyone did.
Yeah, and we already talked kind of about the first Black Panther movie and how the ending fight scene definitely doesn't hold up. But still, I don't know, I just thought this movie was gonna be doomed. I legit thought this movie was gonna be doomed, so I didn't bother seeing it. Then later on, I started watching this movie, and I was like, man, I'm 30 minutes in, and this is I'm liking this, and it is a long movie. I didn't expect it to be so long, but I probably would have been shorter if Chadwick Boseman was in it, because they don't have to do a different origin story and all that stuff. But I really liked Namor. I'm not sure. Is it Namor?
It's Namor in the film, but a lot of people, most of everyone in comics say Namor, because that's just
yeah,
you're too, yeah.
Yeah. But I thought he was really cool. I think there was one scene where I was like, man, he's kind of overacting. But other than that, I thought he was phenomenal throughout the film. I am also I wasn't too attached to Shuri as a character from the first movie, but I think she does I think she does it well in this movie, which is cool. But yeah, I don't know. I think that there are some things in this film that I think could be wait, what's going on? But otherwise, I think overall it was really cool. I thought the invasion of Wakanda, I thought that was cool. I thought that was a really cool scene just as a whole. Just and Namor, the choreography of fighting, I thought was also super cool. The way that, because I know in the comic, I looked it up, because in the comics he kind of jumps on air, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they made it look like that while he was flying, and I thought that was really cool. It's a different sort of flying than just, oh, I'm gonna put my hand in the sky and then fly, And I thought that was really cool. I thought it was just different. So there were a lot of cool things. There were a lot of things that I thought were really. I'll touch on some of those later. But yeah, anyways, your overall thoughts?
Yeah, Namor, Namor, whatever you want. It's hard to. I will admit, I've read a good bit of because Namor is one of the Fantastic Four antagonists / people he's got to cut and dice with, because he likes Reed Richards' wife, Sue Storm.
Oh,
yeah, that's a whole thing which has been
cool.
going on since the inception of the Marvel universe. He is also a mutant in the they do a little bit deviation here, because obviously you don't have the X-Men in the Marvel in the MCU, but because of that, but he's also tied with the X-Men because he is a mutant, and
yeah,
you have to deal with that whole hey, I'm different from the regular human because of the mutant gene. I've always treated Namor as what if Aquaman was actually cool and an interesting character, because that's what he's always been for me.
Yeah, he's way cooler.
It's not just I talk to fish. It's man, this guy's got obviously, yeah, Aquaman has an empire downstairs, but it feels in this movie, he's a great villain. You understand what the character wants and the motivations of everything of the sort with the environment that he's dealing with, and yeah, it's a great conflict. I wish Chadwick were there to like witness it, because I think what they probably had going on for this film, and what you're reading there, like in the Avengers comics I gave you, there's a lot of that from the Avengers comics. There's a lot of that put in here with the whole Wakanda versus that. I cannot say the city's name. But I think again, like, they did the best with what they could here, and I don't want to pit any of that against anyone, because I mean, when you probably had to completely redo the script and reshoot a lot of scenes because of the tragedy. So I loved it. I loved it in theaters, and I still liked it on a rewatch.
Yeah, I almost think that saying they did the best with what they could, it almost seems like they didn't. Like, I think they did good. Like, they did very well, like, even just not even like considering what happened, obviously they did phenomenally, but just even if like no one had any knowledge of that, I think that they did well. Yeah, so yeah, they were like, overall I thought this movie was fantastic. I do love that at the end they do show T'Challa, and it's a very emotional, because it's Shuri's memories. I really liked that, instead of like showing an image of or a picture of him in a picture frame or something in the beginning. Like, I liked the touch at the end, kind of like a send-off, which you kind of mentioned earlier. But yeah, like, I thought there were some things that didn't make sense to me. One, I'm like, in the beginning there's like some, I don't know, like just regular soldiers or something trying to like steal vibranium from Wakanda. I'm just like, in what? Like, why would you not, like, if you were gonna plan that, why, one, either not have some sort of super soldier, or two, not have some sort of like super villain, superhero type person do that? It doesn't make any, like, you're just gonna send some regular people in to try to like,
right, they try to get the most rich and rare metal on Earth that can only be found in one section of the world.
It makes that made no sense. But whatever. Like, I don't even think they really needed that part in there, man. Like, but one complaint I had, which isn't about like the writing, directing, any of that stuff, it's about the lighting. Like, I think this movie, it was very dark. I had to turn the brightness and contrast on my screen up like to max, so that they were like, so that I could see. And I have like, these are like blackout curtains here, so I'm like watching this in the dark, and I'm just like, why is it so hard to see? Like, I don't like it almost there's, I forget what movies I would compare it to.
Did you watch Aquaman?
No, I did not watch Aquaman. I have no interest in it. I think Jason, so I've not seen. He's like anti-charismatic to me, or maybe just in the Justice League film he is, but yeah,
because like in that film, Atlantis is like this weirdly, oddly CGI beautiful, like, sort of atmosphere where you can actually see the landscapes and the architecture of the underground world, which I would have loved to see, but I can't see much of it in this movie because it's all drowned out by water, and maybe that's just the part of it. But it's also like, I want to see what's happening in the film, because that's part of the whole point of watching a film, is getting to see what's on screen.
Oh, dude, it's very dark from the beginning. It reminds me of like the ending of the Long Night episode. But in the middle of the last season, they do like the all-out war between the walkers, or whatever the hell, like the frozen walker, the White Walkers, and like the protagonist armies kind of thing. And like, you can't see most of the battle, and that's how it felt like for about half of this movie. There were things that were happening like in the dark, but like not like almost in the dark, not in like a Hollywood sense in the dark, but just like almost like some, I don't like a lower tier budget thing, And I know some productions will use dark lighting to hide bad special effects or bad CGI, but this is like a major production. So I just don't understand why that happened. And that's like an actual complaint for me. It's like, why is this so hard to see? I guess another complaint I guess I would have is that, and this is not true, this is not unique to the MCU, this is true for like all of modern like science fiction, but in this movie the technology is basically magic. Like, it can kind of just do anything. And I think what's kind of weird to me about that is that there's obviously magic in this universe, like Doctor Strange, Scarlet Witch, that's all magic. And the Black Panther sort of potion is obviously magic. And so it's just like I think that they could do a better job of like integrating the sort of like magic elements with technology. But otherwise, like obviously, like I have a glowing review of this film. There's actually one major thing, like sort of like theme or commentary that like I want. Cool. And like you said, Ryan Coogler, fantastic director. I actually want to go back and watch some of his other stuff, his non Black Panther stuff, because like I was just reading about him after watching this film, and I was like, man, this guy's awesome. Like this guy's amazing. Like he's also like 37 or something.
Yeah, he's
35.
young.
He's super young, dude.
And
I'm
already
like,
super
guy,
accomplished.
Yeah, this guy is like, he's gonna be, I mean, if I had to guess, like one of the best new directors of like of this generation, you know? And I think that's really cool. And if this was not Ryan Coogler, I would not even read this much into the movie, but because it is Ryan Coogler and he's such a phenomenal director, and obviously Black Panther had a lot of like themes in it that were important at the time. Like I think like, so for example, I think if someone were to watch like the original Black Panther movie 20 years from now, I don't think it would have the same effect, because the Black Panther movie came out like in a time, like time wise, you know what I mean? Like with what was going on in the United States at the time. And I think this also had like, this one isn't as tied together with like what's happening like socially and politically, but it still has some themes like that. And so one of the things, the thing that I wrote down is like, I think the water theme is really intentional and interesting, because obviously like Black people were brought over to the United States during the transatlantic slave trade, or brought over to the Americas in general, and like the suffering of people during slavery is horrible. And some of the stuff that like gets not washed away in the history books but doesn't get talked about enough is the journey to the Americas being absolutely horrible. They talk about it a little bit, obviously I'm not gonna get too, but the bottom line is a lot of Africans died on the way over in horrible conditions, and their bodies, they were never buried, they were never given some sort of ceremony, they were just thrown out in the ocean. And I think that like this movie with like almost the main, and then obviously the queen drowns to death, and I was just like, man, like the theme of like water, which theoretically should be like this journey, like this life thing, right? Water brings life, like it's the only reason we're alive right now. But also being like the cause of death, I think that's a pretty cool theme. Maybe I'm reading too much. I kind of like that. And it's Ryan Coogler who did the original Black Panther. One of the other movies he did was also a man on the BART getting killed by a cop. And so I think that as a director, he's very socially aware. And so I could say maybe I'm reading into this too much, but at the same time, I do think there's some intention here. And so, yeah, I don't know. I think there's more I would say there, but I don't want to direct it too much into that direction.
It's, you know, the first Black Panther film like was liberating for a lot of folks, right? Especially like, I hate using the whole I have a friend who's Black and all that, but I mean he loved the film, like absolutely, like it was like he felt like the sense of joy and you know like I'm watching it and I'm like, I love that film for Killmonger, because he's the star of the show for me in that film, where it's like, okay, he wants to liberate all of the Black people that were incarcerated or mistreated in all of these countries, and use the power of Wakanda like to take over. I'm like, that's a cool thing. Like, I wish we got more of that. That's why if that whole film was about him, like Black Panther would be a 10 out of 10 movie for me. I was surprised to see a bit of that too, where Shuri, you know, gets the herb and powder and, you know, goes into the dreamscape sequence, and it's not T'Challa, it's not her mother or father that he sees, but it's Killmonger there on the throne being like, we're expecting someone else.
That was cool. I like that. I like that a lot. I thought that was really interesting. I don't know if like sure, you know, story wise, it or lore wise, I guess, I don't know if it made the most sense, but I was like, oh, that's interesting. I like that, because I think Killmonger, like you said, is really interesting. I also think he's it's very easy to like empathize with Killmonger, to see where he's coming from. Like if you grew up in the United States in a very poor community and your dad died when you were young, and then, you know what I mean, and all these different things happened, and then all of a sudden you found, like, you obviously, like, you grew up in the United States, you know about like slavery and these like horrible conditions, that Black people have faced for the last 400 years. You know what I mean? Even after slavery, Jim Crow, and all that stuff. And then you found out there was a super country like hidden within Africa that could have stopped this or could have stopped something like the slave trade. I would have grievances too. Like I think that's a totally realistic character sort of like motivation. And so I agree. Killmonger in the first in the first Black Panther movie.
Even like the second one where he just shows up and it all like thinking wise with the whole lore and whatnot, it might be difficult to explain with like, oh wait, you're supposed to see your dad, not like, but it made sense with the story. And even like, you know, at the end with where she's fighting Namor on the beach, and you know, she's like overridden with like, do I kill this guy because of like the suffering that he's caused my family and my country, or do you show what your brother and your mother taught you with, we are not like these people for a reason, like we have all this power, it's time to, you know, use it for a better good instead of I love all those themes incorporated. It's something that like was solely missing in like Thor: Love and Thunder didn't have that, Doctor Strange 2 didn't have that, but I'm glad it's in this movie. And I like it's superheroes, man. Like people are just like, oh, we want to see them defeat the bad guy, but I think that there's so much more like nuance and levels that you can bring like to these stories, which is why I keep going back to them. It's why I read comics. It's not just like, obviously I want to see the bad guy get punched, but why does the bad guy get punched? And I appreciate that this movie had a lot of things to say. And you know, there should be nothing wrong with that. Like, why can't our movie, like all of our superhero movies, be like this?
Yeah, I think like, and a lot of this gets lost too, because people will complain about, science, but like, and I've said this so many times before, like, and we'll probably talk about this throughout, in different episodes, but good science fiction, which like the MCU technically is science fiction, but good science fiction comments, whether it's 1,000 years in the future, 20 years in the future, whatever, comments on like what's going on and what's going on today, right? It's applicable to today, but you have this technology that kind of changes things, or this, in this case, magic and technology that changes things. I thought the ending fight scene between Namor and Shuri was good. The only thing I wish is that it didn't cut between the fight scene and the war sequence. I wish that we could have just seen the fight scene for what it was. And I'm sure there are edits on YouTube that string it all together so there's no interruptions. But I thought that fight was so sick, man. And I'm excited to see like Namor in hopefully like the next Avengers films. He seems really strong, I would imagine, because like the only reason Shuri was able to fight him even after she got the Black Panther serum and she was in a vibranium Black Panther suit and all that stuff is because like they like limited his oxygen intake, basically. You know what I mean? And so like a full strength Namor to me seems like he would fit right in with like the Avengers, and I think that's really cool.
I mean, that's why we've had a whole lot of Avengers books like starring him. I mean, like there's a 60s 70s series called The Invaders where it's not 60s, like 40s, where it's like Namor, Captain America, and the original Human Torch, like all fighting alongside each other against like Nazis, bad guys, like you name it.
That's hella cool.
So yeah, I mean, there's a whole super potential too. And then if they do the whole X-Men, or they're gonna be in the MCU at some point, which I hope they do. I mean, I hope that mutant gene gets introduced, because that just adds another whole layer to. Like, I like it when stuff gets complex. Like, I usually don't shirk away from it, but, like, come on. Like, you have a movie franchise that's... I mean, yes, they are figuring out what to do now and course correct, but you still have a whole fleeting universe of all of these different amazing concepts. That's why I always, like, go back to... this is, like, the template. It's like, they did things right. Everyone, like, makes mistakes, and, there's nothing wrong with course correction. I hope we get to see more of these characters at some point, and the young T'Challa is probably going to get aged up after Secret Wars or something, and we'll have a new Black Panther actor or whatever, but yeah, it's a genuinely good surprise for me, and I'm glad that this movie got made, and got released, and all that other stuff.
100%. I think, like, this movie, I think without Wakanda Forever, Phase 4 is collectively, like as a whole, very, very, but like it's almost like Wakanda Forever is dragging Phase 4 to Phase 5. Like I don't know, you know what I mean? But yeah, I was just so pleasantly surprised by this film, because I actually think, like, as a movie as a whole, I think this movie's better than the first one. Like, I think I think the first one is more beloved because of, it is the first one, it does its own thing, but I think the second movie, and I love Chadwick Boseman, you know what I'm saying? Like, I think this one is, I just think it's better. Like, as a standalone film, I think it's better than the first one.
I think Shuri's whole ascension to being Black Panther is better done than because the whole arc with T'Challa in the first movie is something that he already learned in Civil War. But that was actually one of the more disappointing parts of that movie for me, where it's like, yeah, he already learned how to let go and not be so bloodthirsty and lust after violence. He learned that in Civil War, and Civil War did it better. Like, that was one of the best parts of that film. But I think the whole Shuri journey along, like, figuring out, like, who she is as a person with her legacy in regards to wearing the Black Panther suit and what she means as the leader of Wakanda, I think that they did that the writing for that was better in this movie than it was in the first movie with T'Challa.
Yeah, I actually really like the big guy too. I don't know.
M'Baku?
I think so. Like, he's fighting with the club when
that's M'Baku.
I thought I really like him, like, as a character in this film. Like, I think he's like surprisingly very rational. You know what I mean? Like, in the first film, they kind of paint him as like this outsider, outcast kind of guy, and in the second film, I think I don't know, maybe they just chose to write him differently, or I don't know.
They just put him in more, right? I think screen time. I think more screen time definitely, like, helped his character, instead of, oh, he's the one note guy that, like, challenged T'Challa and helped out the Wakandans after Killmonger took over the throne. But I mean, kudos though to the MCU, because, like, I'm so glad that they got stuff to release out that I can, like, review and talk about. Because it's better than, because it's so weird, and I think with, like, all the, because we are at 1 hour and 51 minutes into this, but, like,
nice.
The one thing I will say is, like, looking back at Phase 4, I know that some people have, like, this whole, like, opinion of, like, maybe they shouldn't have put out as much content, or what do you think, in your opinion, is the overall, like, this is what needed to be fixed about Phase 4? Instead, like, what would you have done differently, I guess, if you were Marvel and you were just like, we got to put something out post Infinity War, like, looking back on what we have?
Yeah, I think the problem with it right now, and this is a meta problem, is that Marvel is beholden to Disney in order to make money. Disney, you know what I mean? Like, Disney has a stock. They have shareholders. They're publicly traded. And I think, like, because some of these movies, again, Black Widow doesn't need to be made at all, right? This is just a movie that they wanted to make to put people in seats, because they need, like, it's almost like a constant bombardment of MCU content, but they're saturating their own market because, like, they want consistent revenue. And I think that's a problem, man. Like, I haven't seen Hawkeye. There's a lot of MCU shows I haven't watched. I can't think of one that I've finished. I didn't finish Loki, and I thought I didn't finish the first season of Loki. I was like, oh, like I don't know why. I'm just not interested in that. But so it just seems like they need to pause for a minute. They need to let it breathe. I think that's the issue, is they're not, like, letting the MCU as a whole breathe. And I think the movies need to intentionally introduce characters or change character element, which is Namor, and does it fantastically. Black Widow introduces whatever her sister is in the film, I forget her name. Introduces Yelena, yeah, like, and so maybe that's cool that they're gonna introduce, like, the Black Widow sort of, like, follow up. But, like, Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, it introduces, I guess, some cool, but the character, like, you don't need to do a Doctor Strange movie to do that, you know? That, because Doctor Strange himself doesn't make any changes. Like, he doesn't, like you know, like I said, like, it doesn't review. And so I think that they need to pause, and then they need to make movies that have a purpose, because these movies in a large part feel like they do not have a purpose. At least like Multiverse of Madness for sure doesn't seem to have a purpose. Eternals, you know, I guess it's different, so I won't fault it there, but you know, it also seems like, you know, it doesn't really have a purpose. Shang-Chi, different, because I like that they're, you know, it kind of branches the MCU in a different direction, which I like. So that's good. It's kind of like what I think that, I guess, the Black Knight film will do, right? If it's like got a Blade crossover, like, it kind of just goes in a different direction. Not everything has to be a world-ending threat. And hopefully Shang-Chi will kind of like go into that direction. Far From Home, the purpose is make money, like, for sure. It's to make money. Thor: Love and Thunder, again, doesn't really have a purpose. Doesn't introduce any new characters, because the characters that it does die, right? And then also, Thor isn't dramatically changed in it. At least I don't think he is. It doesn't seem like he is. From the beginning to the end, it seems like he's the same Thor. So, you know, and I think that's the issue. And I'm not even talking about the shows. I'm not talking about, you know, whatever shows are considered in Phase 4. What are the shows in Phase 4? I don't even know.
We've got WandaVision, we got Loki, we got Hawkeye, we got Captain America, or Winter Soldier and Falcon. I keep calling it Captain America, but Captain America is not in that. Miss Marvel, Moon Knight, She-Hulk.
God, wow!
Look at how many shows. Yeah. Look how many shows that we got, right? But it's like, do we need all of that? And I don't think we do.
No, we don't. And like, some of them would be interesting, but like, I don't know. Like, She-Hulk would be a great reason to have another Hulk instead of a series, you know. And maybe Hulk movies are hard to do, but whatever. And like Moon Knight, I don't know. I love Oscar Isaac, and I didn't want to watch Moon Knight. I am MCU kind of like saturated, you know, and that's one of the reasons most of the movies that we talked about today, I didn't see. Saw movies that are going to be really, really interesting to me. And I wish I would have saw Wakanda Forever in theaters. I think that would have been an experience.
It was awesome.
Yeah. So I don't know.
Probably. Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with all of the points you just made. I don't think people have a problem with superhero content, because we've seen what, like, Guardians 3, Spider-Man, Across the Spider-Verse.
Into the Spider-Verse, yeah.
Like, you know, all, like, you know, Across the Spider-Verse, like, broke animated records for animated film releases. Like, people will go out and watch your movie if there's a reason for them to go out, and it's also good. Like, you know, I think we're all forgetting that. Like, I think that's honestly the biggest problem of Phase 4 is quality. They put quantity instead of quality over, like, you know, and prioritize that instead of it being the other way around. And it showed. Like, now people, like, I don't think superhero fatigue is real, but I think when you push as much stuff out there as possible, it's going to make people like pick and choose like what they want to watch. And when and it's just, again, we have a lot of some of these projects I wish were better, and maybe they probably could have been if they treated them with a sense of respect and right to not only the people in the movies but also the audience. I think, like, I'm partly tired that I have to watch all of these movies. Like, it feels like homework now. It doesn't feel like I want to go out and go see a movie in the theater. It feels like homework, and that's the last thing I want to do.
100%. And then a lot of this too is like, okay, because eventually, that is inevitable, right? And I'm kind of just wondering, like, which characters are going to be important in the new Avengers film, because I do not know. I have no idea which characters film, because you know, like, I don't want to watch a bunch of these movies in theaters if, like, the big one, you know what I mean, if like they're gonna have like a small cameo in the next Avengers film. That's just kind of how I feel about it. I feel like, because I obviously will probably see the next Avengers film in theaters, but I want to make sure that it's I don't know. I guess I've kind of fallen off. I used to watch all of them. I haven't done that in a long time. Like I don't think I've seen all the Phase 3 movies. Like I didn't watch Ant-Wasp, you know. It's kind of like whatever.
Nothing
but,
much. The only thing that you need to watch in Ant-Man and the Wasp is the post-credit scene.
Yeah.
That's that's it. And I love the MCU. It feels weird to say because I feel like I panned more than half of the films that we talked about in this review.
Oh, same.
But it shouldn't be asking too much for a multi-billion-dollar corporation to get creative and again just make good movies. People will not I think that's all people are asking for. We're not asking to like put out the same schlock because like I kid you not, like all the TV shows, I like some of those TV shows, but 95% of them are the same. It's like, hey, you got this character, and then they find something out about them, and then they get their costume, and it's the same thing for all of them.
Yeah, and they have the same personality, man. It's, oh, I'm quirky. Ha, here's my joke. Oh, wow, that's so cool. Like, great. Right on, dude. So, yeah, I agree. Yeah, I know. So, 2 things we want to do before we close out. I know you want super down to do that and then rank the post-credit. Is that what we were doing?
Yeah, we're going to rank the post-credit scenes real quick because I feel like most of these were just A-okay. They didn't, invite...
A lot of them were filler.
A lot of them just didn't feel... Okay, which was your favorite one, though, out of, the whole bunch? All right, so, post-credit scene. So, we've had a lot of different title crawls, right after featuring, all these Marvel characters. We started... this whole entire saga started off with Iron Man getting the Avengers Initiative thing that sort of, jump kicked this whole teaser thing that, the end of movies that we never had before in cinema. And now it's just become you got half of them where you're excited, and then the other half where you're just why do these exist? But
yeah,
that's just the trend. That's just the norm.
I 100% agree. I think that there are a couple in here that are just that literally didn't need to happen. It was one of them, and this will be okay. Hold on. I think I'm looking at it because I wrote down what the post credit scenes were. I think the one that is the most useless, I guess, is maybe from the Multiverse of Madness, where it's the guy who stops punching himself finally, or when Doctor Strange opens his third eye, and I'm kind of just I guess I understand everyone's the colloquially what the third eye is, but I'm is that significant in the comics? Is the third eye significant in the comics or something? Because that meant nothing to me.
So what I actually read that scene as was that Clea Strange, who is Doctor Strange's wife in the comics, and spoiler alert, also becomes Sorcerer Supreme in the most recent run of Doctor Strange. She pops up in there and does stuff, and that's what I think is going to be the future teaser for. Now, I didn't get it either because it was a super confusing scene to begin with, so that's why it's near the bottom for me. But that's what. Yeah, I honestly did not read much. It was super weird. I don't know how I feel about it because even if you were just a regular moviegoer, right, it doesn't make sense, and it shouldn't make sense.
Exactly. I don't have the context that you have, so I'm. What is that? I think tied with that, or maybe even worse than that. I thought the Shang-Chi post-credit scene was kind of just cool, I guess. Bruce Banner shows up, and then
Captain Marvel also's there.
Yeah, and I'm just okay, so they're basically just saying welcome to the Avengers, which is yeah, we kind of knew that already. It's
technically implied. It's implied.
Exactly. You didn't have to show. It's a. I don't know. It was kind of I was just why does this does not need to be here, And so I think those two for me were the bottom, I guess, as far as I don't know how I'm ranking this. What's my criteria for this, right? I guess one is does it get me excited for the next film? I guess I think that's the number one criteria, or does it get me excited for the future of the MCU at all? And I think both of these movies do not do that for me. And it's weird because obviously I ragged on Doctor Strange for a long time. I think we both did. Shang-Chi is on the other end of the spectrum as far as Phase 4 goes, right? Like it is.
It's one of the
you know
best
what I mean?
films for us. Anyways.
Yeah, and like I think I would go like Wakanda for, then Shang-Chi, and then the rest of them are like at the
somewhere in the
general,
mix.
like yeah. But yeah, like I think those are tied for the I don't remember the Ragnarok. What's the Thor Ragnarok?
So there's two. Apparently,
Love and Thunder. Sorry.
So there's the scene where Jane Foster is like she's in heaven, and then like welcome to Valhalla or whatever, and it's like, oh, Jane Foster will return, which makes it's weird. It makes no sense, but you know it is what it is. And then the reveal in that one is that Hercules is a thing after the whole God Butcher.
That's right. I do remember.
Who is a very important character in the Marvel cosmic sense of cosmology, if you want to call it that.
Yeah, that okay, so I think the Jane Foster one is just like, so you just resolve like half the conflict of the whole film in 10 seconds. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like that's, to me, that's dumb. Like storytelling wise, that's dumb. It's basically saying like, oh yeah, and like all the conflict in this movie, JK. Like it doesn't matter. So I think that's dumb. The Hercules thing it is interesting to me because I think that could be more interesting, but at the same time I'm like, I kind of wish that the God Butcher was still alive, because I think that like having a bunch of different gods come together, or like having this whole conflict, I think that's a good time to bring the God Butcher in, because you can have Hercules fighting Thor, you can have Thor, you know, all these different people fighting, and then all of a sudden they're like, dude, if we don't stop fighting each other, this guy's gonna murk us. You know what I mean? But we don't get to have that. And so, yeah, I don't know, man. I think it's hard for me to rank them. The Far From Home Venom scene, we already talked about that.
That was so weird. I don't know how, like, I would like it more if I cared about Eddie, but he's just Tom Hardy who has a weird relationship with a symbiote.
Yeah. I like Tom Hardy as an actor, you know what I think, you know what I mean? I like what he has good physical work, you know, with his body language and stuff, and I think that's really cool. But the Venom movies suck. Like, they're awful. They're so awful. And so I am not, and also it's like the Venom movies themselves were kind of just like, oh yeah, we're gonna do Venom. No, Spider-Man's not in it. It's like, wow, why? Like, why? I just don't understand.
And if that's how you feel about Venom, I mean, he's the only one of the entire amazing list of rogues that Spider-Man has that could stand up, because he has stood alone. Like, he's had 200 plus issues, right, of him doing solos, of Eddie doing solo stuff. You look at all the other villains like Doc Ock, Green Goblin, Mysterio, like those guys cannot take their own move, and Sony keeps acting like they can do a Spider-Man universe without the one guy that ties it all together, the reason why they're all there in the first place.
It's Sony is like, so like, as far as film goes, is so incompetently run, it's hilarious. And this is I mean, we could talk about like production studios as a whole in a different episode. I think that would be an interesting thing about, but yeah, I think that Sony's Spider-Man-less, you know, what do they call it, the Rogue Gallery, is it's Spider-Man's Rogue Gallery but without Spider. I think that is an example of just gross incompetence. Another example of that is them putting Morbius back in theaters because they thought people liked it. Like, that is like hilariously bad. It made more
$0.
Yeah, I would love to, we could spend a whole episode talking about how everything is, you know, like the like CEOs and stuff like that, the higher ups, they don't know what makes a good movie, you know, and they don't care. They're just going to keep producing. They're going to keep making these movies, and they're going to keep sucking, and I'm going to keep not watching them. You know what I mean? I'll watch them for this. I'll watch them for free, and I'll be real right now. I will not see those movies in theaters. I will not see a Morbius movie. I'm not going to see Craven in theaters. I don't care. But like, yeah, I don't know. So that post-credit scene, it just didn't do anything for me. You know, I was like, oh, cool, Venom. Maybe we'll get to see Venom versus Spider-Man finally, after like over a decade of wanting to see that on screen again. Done well, though. not in Spider-Man 3 Sam Raimi version. And I don't think we're gonna get that. I genuinely don't. Yeah, and so okay, so that's like 4 post-credit scenes already. I guess 5 if you count the fact that Thor and Love and Thunder has 2 that I just don't do anything for me, which leaves Black Widow and Eternals and Wakanda, right? Those are the 3 left that we have.
Mm-hmm.
As far as like excitement level goes, I'm gonna say that Wakanda's at the top, because I do like the idea of T'Challa having a son. I think that's interesting. I think that like kind of like it also shows like gives us a glimpse of the future of Wakanda, because maybe Shuri, I don't know, maybe she never gets married, maybe she never has a child or something like that, or maybe she never has a love interest, because that's totally possible. And I do think that it kind of also brings us back a little bit to, even though obviously this isn't Chadwick Boseman's real kid, but it has like I think like a very good connection for the audience. Oh, this is T'Challa's son, you know. So I think that honestly might, and it's not overdone. I think that's the thing I like too, is it's not overdone. Like the Shang-Chi one to me feels overdone. But yeah, the Black Widow one, nah.
We talked about it. We talked about it earlier, where it was just like if you had full context of who the characters were and what they were doing, it'd probably like land more, but it just doesn't, because because they were. I think people like the MCU was expecting everybody to go watch every single thing that they put out just because of name brand, and that doesn't happen. Like, you shouldn't ask your audience to do the homework again. And all of the times, like, I'm in school right now. I hate school sometimes. I do not want to do homework every single day. And they keep asking, like, if people can just tune in.
Yeah, and it's long homework. There's no short. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was saying. No.
I was going to say there's no shortcuts, man. Like, you know, like, I can't just skip. You know what I mean? Like, I have a master's degree. You know what I mean? I'm a professor. I coach and all this stuff. When I was a student, like, there were shortcuts. Not in, like, me cheating, but I was like, oh, I don't actually have to read this to understand what's going on. Like, a lot of professors just straight up, they'll be like, oh, yeah, you have to buy this textbook. And then the class never uses that textbook. And that, when I was in college, drove me nuts. But that's kind of what some of these series feels like, man. Like, I don't, you know, it's exactly like you said. Like, it's almost like busy work. Like, why are we doing busy work in movies?
Right, like, we should be watching these for fun, because this is, at the end of the day, entertainment. And yes, like, movies should always, like, have, like, some outstanding message. Like, yeah, we want to hit the bar, but at the same time, like, this is something that we sit down for 2+ hours and just, like, enjoy ourselves with, right? Like, that's the whole point of all this. Like, I buy these stupid comic books because it gives me 5 minutes of entertainment. That's it. And if they aren't entertaining, why do you keep on watching them? Why do you keep on consuming the content? And I feel like, I mean, it's the same with, like, these post-credits. It's like, why do you expect someone to watch Hawkeye? What if that person doesn't like Hawkeye and doesn't want to watch that show?
Yeah, I don't think Jeremy Renner is like that. Like, they tried the Jason Bourne series with Jeremy Renner after Matt Damon was just like kind of didn't want to do it anymore. And yeah, it just didn't. I never saw that movie. I watched a Jason Bourne movie without Matt Damon. But also it's kind of like, I don't know. He's just not interesting to me. Jeremy Renner is not like a lead actor for me. And so I was totally turned off from seeing a whole series that focused around him. But yeah, so that's why I had to ask you, is Yelena in Hawkeye? Because I genuinely had no clue, dude. And I didn't want to spend 8 hours or however many episodes watching it. So yeah.
It's honestly something that should have been a movie, and honestly, I wasn't even there for Jeremy Renner, even though his like story is like super well written. I was there for Haley Steinfeld and her interpretation of Kate Bishop, because Kate Bishop's one of my favorite characters in the comics. Like, she's snarky, she's got this like really good vibe against Clint, and like the whole dynamic of them. So I wanted to see that played out. I wasn't there for There's a whole nother thing about the Hawkeye show too, where the guy who drew the Hawkeye comic that was inspired from, very popular one in the 2010s. Guy's name is David Aja, and Marvel did not pay him, even though like a lot of the show's visuals and like graphics and everything else were from his like that he drew, that he created, and everything else. So
that's so shady, man. Come on.
I know, that's the disappointing, but
dude, that's okay. All right, like, so we can talk about again like the gross mismanagement of like studios and like really good creative works and stuff like that. I would love to spend an episode talking about like studio production, CEO, and how they kind of like they just like zombify everything. But that I think we could plan that for sure. But one thing I do, so the last one is the Eternal, where Eros pops in, and we kind of already talked about that one. I don't know anything about Eros. I looked him up, and yeah, like you said, he's Thanos' brother. Harry Styles. I was like, is Harry Styles an actor? I didn't even know that was Harry Styles. I'm like not a One Direction fan or Harry Styles fan, so I didn't recognize him until like I looked it up after. And I was like, oh, he seemed like a natural actor. He didn't seem like he was forced or shoved in. But I didn't get the sort of womanizer vibes from him right off the bat. So in that scene at least, but I 100% believe you. So I'm like, I don't, you know what I mean? Like I thought that maybe he could be like a cool superhero thing, but it sounds like he's probably going to be like maybe an awful, either at the very best anti-hero, at the worst probably like a villain or something.
But yeah, it gets in for more interesting dynamics with like, oh, like is that what Thanos' legacy is? Is that all you have with if in that case? But hey, I mean, I think I agree with you for the most part. I can't name you one like outstanding scene where I was like, man, I gotta tune into like the next thing just because like this post-credit scene like hyped me up to a certain extent. I can't name, like maybe the second scene in Shang-Chi with the again like the 10 rings like being redone or whatever. Like I'll watch the sequel of that, but I just don't feel as excited as I was during the Infinity Saga. Like Infinity Saga, like it feels like for most of the post-credit scenes there, I'm like, man, I want to see what this is about.
Oh man, dude. I mean, the first one, man, where it's freaking I mean not the first one, but one of the first ones, where it's the ending of one of the, and Tony Stark pops in. It's Robert Downey Jr., bro. That was like, oh, dude, what's gonna happen? And none of these happen. They just don't. Oh, actually, I forgot. We forgot the Eternals. So the other Eternal with the Black Knight.
Yeah.
I didn't know that was Blade, talking to him, and that at the very least. So I think actually that one is really interesting to me. You know, like I think the T'Challa one is done well. And the Eros one is kind of whatever, but I think Eternals, I think the Black Knight / Blade talking to him, I think that's really cool. And so, but I also think Blade's really cool. Like I really, really, really want the Blade remake that they're kind of like been working on for a long time to be good. And I don't know if it's going to be good, but I would love for it to be good.
I agree. But, and real quick, what was your least? You gotta pick one. Pick your least favorite movie in the whole bunch. We'll go into ranking movies, and I think that should be it for this pod episode. So yeah, favorite movie.
So least favorite. Okay, so least favorite. You know what's funny? I was gonna say the Marvel, but it's not Phase 4. So my least favorite, I think, is actually Multiverse of Madness. I genuinely think that's my least favorite. But I think that's because that was my biggest disappointment. My most favorite, by far, Wakanda Forever. Like, I think it had the most succinct story. I think even though like there's references to the Avengers stuff, it stands alone as a film by itself very strongly. And I think the antagonist is real. Oh yeah, we were supposed to rank the villains, but I think the antagonist, Namor, is like the most compelling. Like he's the most interesting. He's like fun. Like it's when he's on screen, he's awesome. And so I think that like for me does it. And like I think they got, it's crazy how like some of these stories got like free reign to kind of build their own thing, and Wakanda Forever was like hamstringed at the start. You know what I mean? Like someone took a baseball bat to the kneecaps and we're like, oh yeah, your lead actor, taking him away.
Right.
You know, and the fact that Ryan Coogler, man, like after seeing what, like I like, you know, I mean, I had respect after seeing Wakanda. I'm like, I got to go see the rest of this guy's work. I have to. Like, he seems like he's going to be like one of the next big directors for a long time. Like, I'm just like, man, he's great.
He is awesome.
So anyways, yeah, that's my favorite. Least favorite, I think, is Multiverse. What about you?
Yeah, I think favorite for me would probably also be Black Panther, just because I enjoyed it the most out of like all the movies. I think the one I liked the most, not necessarily like, well, because I think I'll stay on that. Like, Shang-Chi is close enough for me in regard, because I think that movie also does a lot of things right too, like we talked about earlier. But Black Panther probably takes the cake for me. But least favorite is probably like Thor for me, just because I was just expecting so much more from Ragnarok. Like, it's the same director, and it just does not have that same flair. That's
true.
You know, so that for me, anyways. I mean,
yeah.
Multiverse of Madness is a close second, and everything else is just bunched in the middle. As like, it exists sadly, because that, you know, that we had a lot of those movies in this one, but that's how I feel.
To touch on that point, it was between that were like my least favorites. It was between those two, so I think we're pretty much in agreement. But yeah, anyways, sorry,
I agree.
Go ahead.
And last but not least, let's talk about which of the, like, okay, I think we both know which villain is probably, like, we'll probably talk about like as the best, because it's clearly it's clearly Green Goblin. But I'm wondering, like, if you had to pick two other villains as like, oh, these are the also like top 3 in this phase. Because that's another, like before I guess I complete the question. It's like, for Marvel, anyways, you have a whole lot of movies that just don't have great villains, because it's just like one note, I want to destroy and, you know, just like kill off the world, or like just destroy, like the you know, the classic, like, I'm here to annihilate the earth. Or maybe it's like that, but they have like personality, so it sticks better. But they've had a lot of them. But I feel like for Phase 4, we have enough villains where, like, it's not like just a bunch of like the villains from Black Widow, but actual characters who are fleshed out. So, besides Willem Dafoe, who are your other two favorite villains in this phase of MCU movies?
Yeah, I think, well, obviously Willem Dafoe. You know, it's hard to like isolate it because I have the nostalgia factor. But I think if I didn't have that, I think Namor would be my top pick. I mean, he's not really a villain, he's just an antagonist, you know? And I think that's something that's really cool about him. But he also is a good antagonist. Like, he plays his part of the movie very well. His motivations make sense, and I'm not familiar with the actor who plays him, but I liked his performance. Obviously, that Green Goblin, fantastic. Then it's kind of close. Like, I don't know, man. Like, Shang-Chi, like, the dad isn't, and I wanted to connect with Shang-Chi more, especially because, like, I know I'm Filipino, but I do identify with people I'm Asian, because it's just, you know, and I know some Filipinos don't like that. I don't know where you stand on that issue, but like, I know because we're Pacific Islander, but then at the same time, like,
but because the thing with the Philippines, it's much more closer in proximity to the Eastern Orient than it is to countries like Fiji, American Samoa, you know, Micronesia, etc. Right? So
totally, yeah. And so, you know, but like, so I know some Filipinos don't like saying they're Asian. I don't really care. It doesn't bother me at all. So I just tell them I'm Asian, and I've identified like that for a long part of my life. And so, like, I wanted Shang-Chi to resonate with me more, and it didn't. And it sounds like it did with you, and I love that, you know? But I think a lot of it, too, was like, it was like an internal thing, man. It was like, I was watching the movie, and the bus scene happens, and I was like, oh, this is a movie for me. Like, I am excited, but then I didn't get more of that, you know?
Right.
And I think that's why it didn't resonate with me as much.
Because we went to China for two-thirds of the film, and we... Katie must have done a pretty bad job. Honestly, I get it though, because the side character is not as.
I can't with Aquafina, man. I can't. I didn't like her in Shang. I don't think I'll ever watch her stand up. I genuinely, I can't stand her, and I hate that. You know, I don't dislike her as a person, but just the stuff that I've seen her in, the characters she's playing, I'm not a fan. And so I'll leave it at that. But you know, between, I guess if I had to, like, I like Icarus as like kind of the antagonist of the Eternals. I don't. So to me, again, like the Eternals, a lot of people did not like. I know you weren't a fan of it. I wouldn't say I'm a fan of it, but it was way better than I thought it would be. And I liked Icarus as a character. I thought that like him being kind of like one of the stronger Eternals, and then you know, kind of like harboring the secret for a long time, and then having a secret that he's been holding after like things were starting to play out. I thought that was really interesting. And like his motivations to me made more sense. Like it, so I don't know, like, because obviously it's not I don't know, maybe Scarlet Witch. Doctor Strange was so bad, it's hard for me to like the villain, you know. Black Widow was fine, but there's not like the antagonist is
Dreykov stinks, man. That guy, he's just
Dreykov,
yeah, it's like, again, we know human trafficking is bad.
Yeah, and he has like 5 minutes of screen time. That's not like a real antagonist, you know what I mean? He has like maybe I don't know, maybe more than that, but it's like he's barely in it.
He is.
So yeah, it's hard to. It's definitely not God Butcher, as cool as Christian Bale is. It's definitely not.
I love Christian Bale. I just don't like the character that was written for him.
Yeah. Written is, you're using that term very. Yeah. But I think, I like Icarus as an antagonist, but I think that's just because like Eternals, again, like I said, it was better than I thought it was going to be. I wish Crow would have, like, I wish it could have been Crow, because I thought that like the concept of Crow was really, really cool. But it kind of, you know, he kind of is anti-climax for me. But I do like Icarus as like this Eternal that like stays loyal to Atherum or Ashram or whatever his name is. And then, you know, like Icarus being so fed up with himself, kind of he flies into the sun at the end. Like, I thought that was cool. But I think those would be my top three. Like, I don't know. I think I know what your top three are gonna be.
Willem Dafoe. See, I think I probably have like my top two as the guys from No Way Home, just because I love Alfred Molina and I love Willem Dafoe, and I love the way that they were incorporated. Like, it was perfect.
I agree.
Gosh, like every scene that Willem Dafoe's, no matter if he's like, you know, he's trying to fight off the goblin, like the mask, just because, like, you know, he's trying to turn a new leaf as he's good Norman Osborn again. Like, no matter where he is, he's just there and he's dominating. He's just so good. I don't know how else to.
Yeah. Oh, you don't have to say anything about it, man. I mean, dude, one, it's Willem Dafoe. Two, Sam Raimi's Green Goblin is done very well. And then, you know, Far From Home or No Way Home or whatever the hell it's called, it adds him to the movie really well. I thought, you know, as many faults. However, I will challenge you. I don't think Doc Ock is a villain in that movie.
Oh, that's right, because he does actually turn over a new leaf and never attacks Peter again.
Yeah, so I don't think you can pick him. As much as I agree, I don't think. I'm personally going to say you have to choose two more.
I had to choose two other villains that I have to do this for. Just because of the performance, honestly, I still like Wenwu. Like, just for like the acting alone, is enough to at least, like, I'm convinced with that. It's like, I think performances also like weigh in a good bit with, you know, masquerading, like everything else, right? Whether it's the script, the direction, and it's clear that Tony's having like a whole lot of fun in the role. I think I'd probably have him as my number two. Number three. You know what? I'm also mad because like No Way Home also didn't have a Sinister. I was expecting 6, like the Sinister Six, to pop up in the movie. There were only 5. So that was
who was missing again?
So we had Green Goblin, we had Dr. Octopus, we had Sandman, we had Electro, and then we had Lizard, right?
Yes.
Yeah, we didn't have a 6th person there. Because I don't. Do they have enough to pull in 6 though? Because the only other option would be Harry. They have, right. Like Harry wasn't in that movie.
Yeah, Harry. It could have been. Yeah, I guess they could have done like a weird Electro or not Electro, Mysterio thing, or Vulture.
Yeah.
But I guess that's because they're in this universe. Maybe they don't want to pull
Right.
that
They
in,
just
but
want a
yeah.
multiversal. Okay. Gosh.
Oh, it would have been sick, bro, if they pulled in what's into the Spider-Verse, what's the purple guy,
Oh,
the uncle?
Prowler.
Yeah, man. I thought he was such a cool villain.
Because they did mention that like someone asked Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man, hey, I thought you would be black because you help like the lowly people and all that stuff, right? They have a scene explicitly there. That would have been cool for them to pull over, and like they pulled the Aaron Davis from the MCU into the Spider-Verse movie that came out, right? When you see all the different like when you go into the Spiders.
Who's Aaron Davis? Hold on.
That's
Oh, yes. Yeah. Yes, yeah. No, I remember. Yeah, you're right. I do remember that. Sick. But yeah. So, yes, I do know what you're talking about.
Who would I pick as my third, man? You know what, Namor. I don't know why I'm overthinking it.
Yeah, it's not even close, dude. He's like the most complete villain character of all the films, you know what I mean? Like, because if you haven't seen Spider-Man 1 or Spider-Man 2 with Tobey Maguire, then like Alfred Molina and Green Goblin, or Doc Ock and Green Goblin in No Way Home, they don't really, you know what I mean? They're not like, I wouldn't say they're like complete characters. Like, they have character arcs, but you're missing some. I think like Namor is, but I'm still obviously Green Goblin, doesn't matter. But yeah, right. Like, anyways, Namor is, I thought he was well done. I almost wanted more of Namor on the screen.
I agree.
Yeah.
But
yeah. I don't know what it was. Is that all we were covering today?
That's all we're doing.
All hella. So.
Yeah, I mean, we went through 7 different movies in complete length and analysis and detail, and that was honestly this went on a little. Hey, I don't mind longer stuff because I like talking about these things, but this was a lot longer than I think I expected. But this was this was super fun. I mean, just getting to watch movies because I love superheroes, as you guys already know. Like, if you watch my channel. I love this stuff, so I don't mind revisiting. Like, I'll revisit watching the stupid Batman and Robin movie if I need to. If someone's like, yeah, you want to cover it?
Jeez,
like, yeah. That's how much I love these stupid superheroes and capes. Like, it's funny too.
Oh God.
Yeah, my mom was like,
go ahead. Sorry.
My mom was like, a couple of days ago, she was watching Madame Web on Netflix. She was like, hey, you want to watch a movie with me on Netflix?
I was that one. Jeez.
I was like, oh, I'm okay. But no, I mean, I love these movies, and wow, this is again a super long premiere. I don't mind long pilots, but yeah, this was awesome. And yeah. You have any other thoughts?
What are you feeling, Dom? So yeah, I think a good way to end would be maybe throwing up some ideas for the next episode, because we've kind of, behind the scenes about doing Star Wars stuff. We talked about video games. I don't know. What are you feeling?
What am I feeling? I honestly want to stick with I'm feeling Star Warsy just because I just love Star Wars. I did the stupid speech about Yoda.
So I don't think we should do, to be fair, I don't think we should do like Marvel back to back for the first 1 and 2 episodes. But I do know, obviously, spoiler alert, folks. I hope we're not spoiling too much, but obviously we'll be talking about Dead Man Wolverine when that one, or Deadpool Wolverine.
It's gonna be fun.
What's the release for that? Hold on, Deadpool.
It's the last week of July.
Oh, we got lots of time then. Okay, great.
Actually, you know what? I think for our next episode, I would like to cover, because I want to watch some like actual like amazing good fun films that everyone can enjoy, and not just. I want to cover the first Star Wars episode. I will not call it a new, like some people like calling it New Hope. I'll just call it Star Wars. You know exactly which one it's on. We will be.
I know what you're talking about.
We'll cover that next week, so the review isn't as long. Also, so I can enjoy some good character work. some good shots, amazing cinematography, and also just wholesome fun, because that movie has all of it there. So that is what we will be covering next week. And
So just one movie. You don't want to cover the original trilogy?
I feel like, honestly, I feel like the original trilogy. If we did the original trilogy, man, we would be here for like 5 hours.
Yeah, you're right. To do that trilogy justice, we would have to have be like or something like that. So I agree. We'll do the first Star Wars movie, the OG Star Wars movie, 1979. I believe, or 1978.
77.
1979. Oh, 77? Damn. Movie's older than my mom, bro.
That's insane.
I mean, okay, so for the audience out there, my mom, I am 30 years old, and my mom was 14 when she had me. So she was born in 79. Yeah. I'm very lucky to be where I am right now, considering the extraordinary circumstances of what my mom went through. So
that is absolutely insane. But to wrap this all up, I would like to thank every single one of you who, if you have stayed on for this long, listen to us talk about all these amazing movies. Probably slice and dice them up for all the TikTokers as well, because there is enough here to be clipped into some amazing TikToks. But I'd also like to thank my hopefully long-term co-host, my coach Drew, for being here, being awesome. Thank you for being on with this first one. I hope we get like 1,500 more of these, man.
Yeah, hey, I had a lot of fun. Thanks for having me. So when you originally approached me to be on an episode, I was like, be on an episode, and then it kind of morphed to this thing weekly, and I work on. I've never done anything like this before. You are vastly more experienced than I am in this department, so. It's easy. It actually makes it easier for me, because I can trust you to kind of deal with all the behind the scenes stuff. And then I just, obviously I got to watch the movies. I got to do the homework basically, but I just come on here and talk, and then you do all the hard stuff. So that works for me, man.
Hard stuff's fun. But again, thank you guys for watching. Be sure to hit that like button, subscribe if you're new, hit that notification bell so you know when I put out content and we're on. Again, this is recorded on the 28th of May, but this will be up first thing in the morning on the 29th, so every single Wednesday. We're gonna try to figure out an experiment what works best for us, because maybe some days we'll be busy, or hey, sometimes just want to dice up the flow. But it's gonna be a weekly thing, hopefully. And again, thank you guys for watching, and be sure to do all that. You be you, take care, and have a great rest of your day wherever you are.
Peace.